Well, hey guys, how you doing today? Turn that down. I had a nice one today. I felt like today's clip, I decided to go out for a nice walk, and it's resulted in some nice feedback. Been having hilarious conversations with conservatives online. It's becoming really, really clear that these conservatives don't really understand why they are voting conservative. Like, they're just voting conservative because they've always voted conservative, and conservatives conservative, and so they'll vote conservative because they're conservative. But you get talking to them on the issues, and like they don't even know what the issues are. So that's been a lot of what I've been doing today. But without further ado, hey Crouching, we're streaming today. We're streaming today. I hope you're doing fine. Hey Misty, there's so many things for us to see, and this one here is mine. I hope that you're happy. I hope that you're well. Now come on and join me. Watch the world go to hell as we are streaming away. We're streaming today. Let's stream today. Crouching, I have never won a number. Never once have I actually won a number. So it's if you've ever won, then you're ahead of me. Hey Ruth, how you doing? Yeah, you're lying when you're telling her what's going on. Craziness. Exactly. Like it's just this odd, and I'm yet to actually see a conservative explain to me why they're voting conservative, right? Like it just doesn't. Like they really are just like voting from their gut, right? They're voting from their gut. You know, I got a gut feeling about it, so I'm voting from my gut. And if I think about that in terms of the chakra system that I pay attention to, right? That it's good that you listen to your gut, right? That's a good thing to listen to, right? You listen to your gut, but you also got to listen to your head, right? You got to listen to your brain, right? And in the chakra system, thoughts and impulses, right, originate from your root. So these conservatives, near as I can tell, are just thinking with their dicks, right? They're not actually thinking with their heads at all, because the energy comes up and it comes to the heart, and the head goes down to the throat and meets at the heart. This is the link-up point, right? And what I love about the chakra system, the number one thing I love about the chakra system is that if you begin to think that energy begins at the root and goes up, that means it passes through the throat and comes out your mouth before it gets to your head. You ever meet somebody who just says things and you're like, you should have thought that one through, bud? It's because they don't have a connection up here. There's no connection going on here. And I mean, I keep talking to these conservatives, and it's just more and more becoming plain to me, like, oh, you guys really are just like the energy's coming up, and you haven't found a way to even like articulate what it is you like about any of this. Like what is it what's the positive here? What's the positive thing that you really are enjoying, right? And it just comes down to stupid shit like that Justin Trudeau with his floofy hair, his father flipped off the West. It's just like, okay. Yeah, a bladder full of hot air, exactly. All right. So as always, right, we're going to start the stream. David Lynch giving us a bit of an update.
Morning.
Morning to you.
It's August 27, 2021, and if you can't believe it, it's a Friday once again.
What?
Here in LA, a clear morning, very still right now, 64 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 Celsius.
Oh, I'd love to have 18 Celsius.
Today I was thinking about the year, I believe it was 1966. The Beach Boys.
The Beach Boys.
Good Vibrations. This afternoon it'll be going up to 91 degrees Fahrenheit, about 33 Celsius.
Oof.
And it looks like we're going to be enjoying beautiful blue skies and golden sunshine all along the way. Everyone, have a great day.
Thanks, David. Now, of course, yeah, it's very interesting. He always wears the same outfit in all of his videos. No, dude, I think you're right. I think he's doing it on purpose. He's a nut, man. This guy, I love him. I love David Lynch, man. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that he has like an outfit that he on purpose wears. Because he for sure for the number thing, right? So he mentioned the Beach Boys, Good Vibrations. Of course, no surprise here, guys. I can't show you the Beach Boys, Good Vibrations. But I did find a nice Beach Boys album that gives us... and of those tunes, I liked Remember Walking in the Sand. So we're going to hit you with the Beach Boys, Remember Walking in the Sand.
Remember walking in the sand.
So that was the Beach Boys, Remember Walking in the Sand, from their album Summer in Paradise, which, for whatever reason, is in the Creative Commons here on YouTube, so I was able to show... I could show you this whole album if I were so inclined. You're right, Crouching. That does have like an 80s, like a late 80s kind of sound, but it comes out in 92. I could picture this kind of thing being in like Sister Act or something, right? Remember Sister Act? I'm looking forward to Sister Act 3, I gotta tell you. Okay, so now we got Mr. Lynch gonna be drawing us a number. I got a 6 here from Misty, got a 1 from
Here
Ruth,
we go for today's
3 from
number.
Crouching. I am gonna
It's
go.
August 27th,
I'm going with 5. I'm going with 5.
2021.
I'm gonna win one of these days, you
balls.
guys. It's gonna happen.
Each ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10.
It's gonna be a 3, though.
Roll the number.
I'm sticking with 5, but it's gonna be a 3.
Pick a number. Today's number is
7.
7.
The divine number. Today, Friday, the holiest of days. What will tomorrow's number be? None of us were in the holy mood, eh? We decided not to go with the divine number. All right. Such is life, Crouching. We will recover. We will recover. All right. Now, let's dive in to some of the day's news. Let's just start with a COVID update. Why not? Get it out of the way. Let's have one last look. The beautiful, beautiful Ontario landscape. 781 cases. This is the highest it's been to date in this new wave coming up. I'm reading more and more. People are saying, hey, what's going on? Where's Doug Ford? How come we're not seeing any updates? How come we're not getting any kind of regular information? How come the administration seems to have kind of checked out? And honestly, I think it is because the administration has kind of checked out. Doug Ford is laying low because of the election. This is the classic strategy with Doug Ford. The federal election rolls by and he just lays low. Doesn't campaign. Doesn't get involved because he knows that he is a detriment. He knows that his presence in the federal election could upset the apple cart for the Conservatives, who desperately need to make gains in Southern Ontario. Yep, they're hiding Dougie. For sure they are, Ruth. For sure they are. Which I actually think is a little bit odd. I gotta be honest. Like, the more I think about it, the more I think that it is liberal think, right? It's liberal think that says, no, let's hide Doug Ford away, all that kind of stuff. Doug Ford won the election, right? He won the election. He knew how to win the election. And given how the Conservatives are gaining more traction here in Ontario and across the country, you would think that carting Doug Ford out would work, right? And I'm not telling tales out of school. Like, here's the new aggregate data. We've got the Conservatives and the Liberals are now tied in terms of total percentage. Because of the way that the riding distribution works, it does mean that the Liberals are slightly ahead in terms of their seat projection. But in terms of general popularity across Canada, they're tied, which makes sense because they're the same party, right? As you guys know, I say it over and over again on this channel, the Conservatives and the Liberals are allies when it comes to economic issues. They both work for the capitalist class. They both work for the interests of corporate power. They both work for the interests of the fossil fuel industry. They are in lockstep on the major issues that Canadians actually care about. The differences that exist between the Conservatives and the Liberals exist along identity politic lines, basically exclusively, right? That Liberals will wave a little pride flag around, whereas Conservatives will be talking about, Anglo Western cultural values, all this kind of stuff. I love it when Conservatives say that, like, I'm fighting for Western values because Marxism is a Western value. It's part of the Western philosophical tradition. It comes out of Europe, for God's sakes. So, like, it's always funny to me to hear these Conservatives saying, we're here to uphold Western civilization, but not that part, and not that part. Okay, whatever you guys say. And of course, the NDP, dipping ever so slightly, 19.8, not a big deal, and it doesn't reduce their seat count whatsoever. At this stage in the game, like, the NDP are walking away from this election with an uptick in seats, so it's the surprise, of course, is going to be these next few weeks and the debate. I think the debate is really going to matter this time around, but, like, the fact that the Conservatives are going up in the polls at all, like, very thick, and there's credible information to show that they are making their largest gains, the Conservatives are, with male voters, right? So if you want to know who the dumb people are in the society, you're talking about, you got it, straight white men, really representing. Do I have a nice chart to show you? Nah, but they Nanos just went through, and they basically found that if you're voting conservative, chances are good you're a straight white male, and if you're voting liberal, chances are good you're a straight white female. And so really, this election is really coming down to the Karens and the Kens, right? It's just the Karens and the Kens deciding which way they want to go. And they're looking at Jugmeet Singh, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, I like him. He seems nice. He's great and all. I'm not going to vote for him, but I like him. He seems nice." Hey, how you doing? Yeah. I like this, Crouching, what you're saying. He'll come out when he sees his own shadow, meaning an eclipse. Yeah. But he can't stand in front of himself. NDP should be bringing him up. Yeah. Justin is too easy. Justin made a peace treaty for the election. No bad-mouthing. Seems like. I'm a funny guy, Aga. I'm a funny guy. Yeah. Never know what head white... You absolutely you do, Ruth. Let's not fool ourselves. All right? Straight white men think with their dicks. Any of this, like, belief that straight white men are walking around thinking with anything other than their dicks needs to just go right away. The chakra system, I believe it intrinsically, that energy originates at the root, like where your genitals are, right? That's where you begin. That's where things originate from. That is the wellspring from which all things perpetuate, right? And we only trick ourselves into believing that we think with our brain, right? And justify things retroactively, right? That's how it actually works. That we're walking around reacting to stuff and doing things based on our stimuli and all that kind of stuff. And then when we think back on what we did, we justify things, right? That's how humans actually operate. This idea that we actually, like, I thought of something and I have an idea, so I'm going to move forward on that idea, and I'm going to, let me think about this and then go forward with it. Like, that doesn't actually happen for the most part. And for good reason. People don't have time. Like, it takes time to really sit down and think about something, to contemplate it, to read about it, to learn about it, to research it, to think about it, to contemplate it. These things take a lot of time, and people don't have that, right? So you basically just have a society of Kens and Karens walking around, thinking with their dicks, right? Thinking with their genitals, and then just, like, reacting to it. And then after it's done, you could ask them, like, hey, why are you voting that way? And they can't really tell you. I think they genuinely, I'm finding this to be the case. Like, I'm genuinely asking conservatives and being like, why are you voting conservative? Like, can I get an actual answer? And it just seems like the answer is, I don't conservative. It's, they're conservative, and they're conservatives, and they're just conservative. So I don't know what they're actually thinking. And there's a lot of weird contradictions in this election. There's a lot of very strange, weird contradictions in this election. Climate change is the number one issue for most people, right? Followed up by almost intrinsically linked on the same kind of level as cost of living. And the party that has the worst record on both is the one that's leading, right? It's the one, it's at least tied. Like, it's very strange. Like, it's very, very strange. There's these incredible contradictions that exist in the populace and in the way that the populace is actually thinking about this. And I genuinely think that the population has only gotten so far as Trudeau. That's basically it. I think the populace is essentially going like, Trudeau, and hasn't really even begun to think or put any effort into thinking about, well, who's this Aaron O'Toole guy? Yet they vote for the second worst parties. And I've also begun to think more and more that Jugmeet Singh's favorability, like the popularity that he has within the populace, is just the Kens and the Karens sort of covering themselves, right? When they're asked, hey, what do you think about the brown guy with the turban? They go, oh, I like him. Oh, yeah, I like him. Not going to vote for him, right? Not going to actually give him a position of power. Not going to actually support him. But, oh, yeah, the brown guy with the turban. Yeah, I like that guy. I'm not a racist. Yeah. So that's kind of what I'm starting to think about what's happening in those polls. Because at first I was like very much like, oh, the NDP have like a high favor, like the Jugmeet Singh has a high favorability. White Canadians are saying that they like Jugmeet Singh, right? White Canadians are saying that they like Jugmeet Singh. And they're saying that they don't like Aaron O'Toole. But who are they voting for? What does that tell you? Why are they saying they like Jugmeet Singh but they're not voting for him? What do we think is happening there? So it becomes something of a smokescreen, I think. Isn't it amazing how the NDP is pretty quiet now about the UBI? I think the last time they spoke about it was in last April. Yeah, it's, again, I've been saying it since the beginning. I do think that Jugmeet has been bought. Like, I think that he is on the side of the capitalists. The only reason I think we should be supporting the NDP is to scare the shit out of the Liberals and the Conservatives, and to continue to convince the capitalist class that the populace can and will move to the left, that it will mobilize to the left. But that's not materializing. If anything, the populace is moving further and further to the right. And I shouldn't say that. It's the Conservatives that have moved to the left in terms of their rhetoric, right? Which is good, and that's all well and good. But the big lesson for the capitalist class and for the populace and for all of us is just that the Canadian populace is very gullible. Like, you just need to like these Conservatives could stand up and say anything. I'm kind of surprised they're not saying more, right? Hey, Dave, how you doing? Good to see you, bud. I'm surprised the Conservatives aren't just saying more bullshit, right? Like, why not stand up and why not just be like, yeah, we'll do a UBI? Why not? They're not gonna do it, and the populace is so fucking gullible that they'll just go along with it. So, like, why not do it? Am I still voting NDP even without UBI? I would vote NDP because Jugmeet Singh has said that he wants to end the fossil fuel subsidies. That's enough. Like, that's enough. The bar for me is so low, you guys. Like, the bar is so low. Like, Aaron O'Toole is a white supremacist whose party has given money to a literal racial purity cult, right? Like, he's walking around saying Canada first. He's walking around saying, doing tweets that follow Nazi coding formulas, this kind of stuff. Justin Trudeau has been a con man and a fraud this entire time. Any piece of major legislation that he said he was going to support, he didn't. Everything they have done has been a grift, a complete smokescreen and a complete cover for the capitalist class. And in many ways, the Trudeau administration has been worse than the Harper administration, right? The Harper administration got us the child care benefit, right? The Harper administration got us the child care benefit. What's Trudeau gotten us? Like, really? So you got those two options, and then your third option is sort of this unknown outlier, Jugmeet Singh, who is at least saying that he wants to raise taxes on the wealthy, who is at least saying that he wants to end the fossil fuel subsidies, which, in my view, are no longer political issues. I think that there are supermajority support in the populace for those. Those are centrist issues. Those are platforms that any reasonable politician should be running on. but we've got two far-right parties, right? Like the Conservatives are a fascist party that are just pretending to care about the populace right now. And the Liberals are essentially like a neocon party. They're pretty far right themselves. And so that's what we've got right there. And then we've got what I view the NDP as like a centrist party. Like I don't think that anything they're coming out with is particularly radical. I don't think that they're very their platform seems not only attainable but very modest. Like raising taxes by like on people who make over $10 million by 1%. That's like the most modest shit ever. Like that's like absolutely liberal, right? Like that's super liberal. And I mean, it is the UBI is in their party platform, but I haven't seen Jugmeet. And again, there is a strategy. There is a strategy to just hanging on to everything until the debate, because everybody's going to watch that debate. The debate is going to be a big deal, especially in this particular election, because it's so short, because it's got this snap election feel to it, and the debate is going to be like a big moment in this election. So that's why I'm not like freaking out about the Conservatives going up, and I'm not really losing my mind about the Liberals dropping or any of that kind of stuff, because in my view, the debate is actually going to be the tail of the tape, because it's a moment when it's like this one brief sort of fleeting moment when a politician can't obfuscate or hide behind a media outlet or something like this, that and we're getting it straight from the source, right? We're getting it straight from the horse's mouth, and it is the moment when candidates can really show to a population that does generally vote just from its gut, right? Like it doesn't really think about these things. It doesn't really like put things in their empathy or their compassion or their heart or any of that it lives in their gut. And it's a moment when a lot of people can have their opinion shifted. And so the debate is going to be really important. Yeah, I will vote Green because they can win this seat. Yeah, I like that the Green Party is there. According to the polling that's coming out, they're actually poised to lose one of their seats, so which is a catastrophe for them. Like that's a catastrophe for them. So but if Annamie Paul being up on the debate stage is going to be important because of the rhetoric that she uses. I think that her rhetoric is going to be very important to have on the debate stage. Something is blocking my... Yeah, I don't know what goes on with the YouTube. And I don't know what the rules are for this, right? And maybe the algorithm is just no brown person can lead a white country. Yeah. I mean, I wish that it wasn't the case, Ruth, but like it does seem to be the case that Canadians are 100% being like, oh yeah, I like Jugmeet Singh. Not gonna vote for him. Well, yeah, I like him though. It's like they're offering everything that's great, but minus the UBI. You just cannot win. Yeah. Again, like they do have it as part of their party platform, right? It is something that exists there, and that's something that NDPers always bring up. But I just don't see him talking about it. And my hope is that he's kind of waiting for the debate. Right, that the debate, like, because what you want to do, right, in the debate, because the debate is the 9th, right, and so that gives 11 days until the election itself, 10 really, because you watch the debate and then the next day it's the 10th, and so you got 10 days for the election to end, and in polls often open, or like voting booths often open within that window, and so you've got this window of time. So what you want to do is you want to go into a debate and you want to just like punch up on the issues that you think are going to be popular and important, and really get it into people's minds. Like, this is what I support, and you want to see, like, seeing an increase in your polls at the beginning of the election is way less important than seeing an increase in your polls at the end. That if you see an increase in your support and an increase in the polls in the last 5 days of the election, that matters so much more. That's so much more. This has to be the most important debate in history. I know we always say that, but it's true this time. Boy, you obviously haven't paid attention how the media manipulates. Oh, yeah, no. After the debate, I'm talking about the debate itself, right? You watch the debate itself and you actually get a picture of what these guys are saying and how they're acting and what they're doing. But afterwards, Elizabeth May was allowed on the stage. Elizabeth May was in the last debates, wasn't she? Anime staying in Toronto to win her seat. I think that this strategy is so bad. Like, this strategy of running Anime Paul in Bill Morneau's old riding, I think it's such a bad call. Like, is there even that much support for the Green Party in Toronto, or in that riding in particular? This is my big complaint about the Greens, and it always has been. They just don't seem to actually think about this stuff strategically. They don't actually seem to look at the map and be like, where is our support? Where can we actually win seats? Right? Like, you've got weird things happen in the Green Party where, like, Elizabeth May ran against, what's his name? Peter, former Minister of Defense, Peter, and almost won, right? Had a narrow loss, but a loss is a loss in Canadian politics, man. Like, you want the seats. And I think she could have ran against anybody in southern British Columbia and probably had a better chance at it. So I've always found the Green Party's sort of strategic mind to not be so strong. Like, they're really just kind of shooting from the hip and making decisions based on, this is my home riding and this is where I want to win. And it's like, okay. McKay, that's right. Peter McKay used to come in to my to the toy store that I used to work in. He would come in, I'd say about once a month. Nice gentleman, near as I can tell. Nice gentleman. I just wanted to show this because I think it's funny. It's Friday, right? Let's have some levity. This 5,000-year-old prosthetic eye found near Zabul in Iran is the oldest in history. It was made from tar and animal fat and painted gold. The wearer was a 6-foot-tall priestess. Do not remove the golden eye from the unnaturally large holy woman's skeleton. Please. This is the beginning of, like, the Mummy, right? Like, it is the beginning of something. I love archaeology, and anytime they find something like this, I absolutely love this kind of stuff, because finds like this can really shift the way we think about ancient history and the way we think. It's like the Temple of Göbekli Tepe that they found in Turkey completely upended the way that everybody was thinking about ancient Mesopotamia. It's a temple structure that they found throughout Turkey, 2,000 years older than the pyramids themselves. They don't really understand what it was for or why they were doing it. I have my own theories. It revolves around a group of nomadic monkeys becoming agricultural, right? That if you are a here, you guys know what's happening. Google Maps. Like, we started as monkeys, right? We all started as apes, or whatever you want to call it. And we're wandering around Mesopotamia. We're wandering around this area, right? So if you're wandering around, the worst thing that can happen to you, if you are a group, like a tribe of apes, like walking through around, the worst thing that can happen to you is running into another tribe, right? Because you're just like eating as you go and just kind of moving forward. And if you suddenly run into another tribe, well, what have they been doing the whole time? They've been walking and eating, right? So, like, you're coming this way, they're coming that way, you run into each other, that's a big problem, right? Even if you look at each other and go like, hey, peace, let's not going to fight, well, where are you going to go, right? Food's gone that way, right? What are you going to do about it? So you got a big problem on your hands if that's what occurs. And so it makes sense to me that they would create a structure of some kind in order to act as like a focal point for them to all kind of meet every so often to trade and arrange things and distribute regions, right? And to say like, okay, we're going to go up here, you guys go up there, okay? We won't mess with you, you don't mess with us. Everything's cool, right? And from there, you know, it becomes a more serious thing until finally there are cities and outposts and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, I love the Temple of Göbekli. It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about. I absolutely love it. I have a lot of favorite subjects to talk about, don't I? Don't I? Anyway, yeah, last thing we need is some supernatural skeleton coming back to screw us all over. Here's a more on-point statement. Mount Shasta with 0 snow. First time in modern history. I would call that handwriting on the wall. Let's take a look. Where is Mount Shasta? Mount Shasta. So, in California. Here in California, for the first time in modern history this year, no snow. If you are still denying the existence of climate change, if you are still sitting here trying to tell me that this does not exist, that it is something that we don't need to be concerned about, I think it's time to grow up. I think it's time to grow up. Like, a mountain literally does not have a snow cap on it for the first time in history. You got an explanation for that? You got an explanation for that? And in the meantime, which party is leading in the polls? Which party is leading in the polls? Like, I'm not even mad about it. I'm not even mad about it. It's so stupid, right? Like, it's so stupid that literally climate change is like smacking us in the face. We've got wildfires going on. We've got droughts happening all throughout. We've got the desert systems are increasing and encroaching. We've got ice caps melting. We've got mountains that have traditionally had ice on their tops with no snow on them for the first time in modern history. We've got lakes that are drying up. We've got all kinds of stuff. We've got all the evidence we could possibly need. And who's leading in the polls? The climate change deniers. That's right. Canadians are so fed up with the Trudeau Liberals' insipid, ineffectual fight against climate change that they're going to double down on the climate change deniers. Like, it's like next level stupid, eh? Like, it's next level stupid. Now, and like, I especially after the Fords here in Ontario, like, anytime anybody wants to say to me, like, well, at least we're not America, like, what are you talking about? Like, at least America doesn't have a climate change denier in office, right? At least America gives more money to the disabled than we do. Like, what are you talking about? At least we're not America. Like, what? We've got a mega cult here too. Like, we've got that shit too. It's the same, right? Like, what's the story? What's the story? So, in other news, the U.S. Supreme Court ends the CDC's pandemic residential eviction moratorium. So, in a vote of 6-3, the Supreme Court voted to allow landlords to evict their tenants. Here's a dissenting comment. It strains credulity to believe that this statute grants the CDC the sweeping authority that it asserts. The public interest strongly favors respecting the CDC's judgment at this moment, when over 90% of counties are experiencing high transmission rates. Liberal Justice Breyer wrote in dissent. So the Supreme Court of America deciding that it is completely fine to throw people out onto the streets, to evict people, in the middle of a pandemic. So you can bet sure as shooting, like this came down what, yesterday? August 26th? Yeah, so yesterday. So there are already people being evicted. I even have a... Yep. Yes, there's a CDC eviction moratorium in this county right now, but I just met with a Houston couple who filed a CDC form, got $7,000 in rent relief. Their landlord received it, but decided to return it and evict them anyway. Then CPS took their baby away because they were unhoused. This is America, man. Like, this is America. This is what they're doing in America right now. They are evicting people. They're throwing them out into the streets for no reason. Like, it's going to cost the Americans more to do this, right? Because homelessness, poverty, starvation, these things cost a lot of money to maintain in a society. It costs a lot of money to maintain this. Shelters, emergency police services, emergency doctor services, food banks, right? These all cost money. They cost a lot of money, right? It costs far more money to hire staff, maintain a building, pay for the fuel and the gas, to get all of these people involved in this process of maintaining someone's poverty. That's and stories like this are going to become commonplace. They're going to become the commonplace throughout America. And of course, if we vote conservative, it's going to become more commonplace here in Canada as well. Because this is what the conservatives are bringing to our front door. For sure. Yep, there's going to be a lot of homelessness coming, boys. I really don't know a worse evil than this system. I mean, it could be more evil. It could be. But if it were to get more evil, then you're talking about literally like Roman Republic shit, right? That's what you're talking about. So, like, we're not the evilest, but boy howdy, are we ever, like, if we decline any further than this, we're going back to, like, some biblical level shit. Like, that's just the truth of it. That, like, there were societies that were publicly crucifying people, right? So let's be clear about our rhetoric. There were worse societies than the one that exists today, but the society that exists today is like right there. It's like right there. So, like, and we can continue, like, we can decline that way. All it's going to take, let's say Donald Trump runs again and wins, right? Let's just have this fun little brain experiment. All it's going to take is some kind of massive protest to occur underneath his rule, and for him to just send in the police forces. And I mean, we know that in Chicago, there was a black site in Chicago where they were torturing people, right? So, like, we are, like, right there. The only thing that is going to be needed is some kind of, like, public event, right? Like, in Chicago, they were torturing people behind closed doors. But soon they'll just be torturing people in the middle of Times Square. That it'll become part of the culture, right? And that kind of maintenance of fear is going to be the next step down for the culture. Ford is the Canadian Trump. There's going to be a lot of homelessness coming. Yeah. This is the result of unfettered capitalism and aristocracy run wild. Yeah. And just, like, focusing everything that you can on profit, right? That the profit motive is the central heart of everything. Because if you can convince your country to go for this idea that says, oh, profit, like, bottom line profit, that's what matters the most. Tom Hardy, how you doing, bud? Isn't that what Trump said would happen? Executions in the street? Right? Like, there's a... And I actually am far more concerned about somebody coming out of the Republican Party that's actually got some competence on him, right? Like, Donald Trump is probably not going to do executions in the street, right? He doesn't have the stomach for it. He is a coward, right? Like, Donald Trump is a coward. And he's easy to manipulate. People keep talking about how, oh, he's so manipulative and all this kind of stuff, but he himself is very easy to manipulate. The military-industrial complex completely manipulated Donald Trump. It was easy to do, too. Like, Donald Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan. That was one of the things that he actually ran on, right? He was actually saying, we're going to get out of Afghanistan, and he was negotiating with the Taliban to get out of Afghanistan. And you know how the military-industrial complex convinced him not to? They literally said, people will think you're a loser. That was it. And Donald Trump would be like, I'm not a loser. You're a loser. I'm not a loser. That's it. So he's easy to manipulate. Like, he's not smart. He's not an intelligent man. And like, people like him would always get talked down from doing that kind of stuff. But somebody coming out of the Republican Party that's actually competent, right? A competent fascist is going to be very, very scary. And that could easily happen within our lifetimes. For sure it could. So, and this chasing of the profit motive, just everything is about profits. Well, it turns out that bombing foreign countries, stealing their resources, and enslaving their populace is very profitable, right? For the small group of people who want to make those profits. Like, and as long as you have a society that is built around the precept of let the free market decide, which is the same as saying let chaos reign, then you're off to the races, right? Then you can use Afghanistan to grow opium, right? You can steal all the oil you want from Iraq, right? You can bomb Syria as much as you want, and it's all very profitable for the 10 people that it's profitable for. It was actually shocking when he finally endorsed vaccines and his flock booed him. Yeah, LOL. You know things are desperate when Donald Trump is begging for people to take vaccines, right? Like, it's what's going on in the United States it is beyond belief. Is beyond belief. Like, literally the idea that there is a massive health crisis going on in the wealthiest country on earth because the citizenry no longer, like, the citizens don't trust anything. They don't trust anyone anymore. They don't trust anyone. And I mean, and for good reason. The United States has done everything it can to deceive the populace. For God's sakes, you've got former heads of the CIA saying that the goal of the CIA was to make sure that no one in America would know what was going on. What was the exact quote? It was something along the lines of, "We will know that the objectives of the CIA have been complete when everything the American people believe is false." Right? But that's one of the stated objectives of the CIA. And if you've got an organization that's as well funded as the CIA, operating in your society, spreading the kind of lies that they do, well, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And everybody wants to blame these anti-vaxxer types, but I'm actually quite sympathetic to these guys. Like, can you give me a reason why I should be believing the government at the moment? Can you give me a reason why I should be believing the government at the moment? Right? Like, I mean, this goes into the next level, and you say, like, okay, but, like, there are frontline doctors, right? There are people who are actually working on the front line of this thing, and you should listen to them, right? That's my position in all of this. Listen to the people who are on the front line. Listen to the people who are actually dealing with the crisis as it's unfolding. What do they want? Like, if you take a, like, support our troops sort of mentality, right? Support the frontline people, support the frontline workers. Well, what do they want? They want you to take the vaccine. That's what they want. And that's enough for me. That's enough for me. I don't need to listen to the WHO. I don't need to listen to the CDC. I don't need to listen to my own elected officials. I don't need to listen to anybody else, right? I will listen to what the person in the hospital on the front line who is actually dealing with the crisis, what they are saying. And what they are saying is take your vaccine. Done. Checkmark. You got it. Absolutely. Whatever I can do to help you, bud. Whatever I can do. And if all it is walk into a Shoppers Drug Mart and get a jab in the arm, right? Off to the races. I don't need to think too hard about that. And but the fact that there's this ongoing catastrophic health crisis that is absolutely destroying major sections of the United States and its economy. I mean, it just shows you how weak They are, as a nation and as a people, right? That like literally we're talking about the flu plus 2, right? The flu plus 1 destroyed the economy in the first place, and now we've got the flu plus 2, and the people can't be convinced or arsed to actually even put on a mask. Bumble Guppy. I love that name. Holy cow, Bumble Guppy. We got to stop for a second and just admire this name, Bumble Guppy. Oh my god, it's so cute. It's just a little Bumble Guppy. Exactly, the notions we Americans should trust either everything or nothing is frustrating. And it is frustrating. It is frustrating. Well, and nobody knows where to turn anymore, right? Nobody knows where to turn. Nobody knows who to talk to. Nobody knows anything. You thought it was an Ayn Rand account? No. I just think Bumble Guppy is a cute name. It's well, and yeah, nobody knows who to trust. Nobody knows who to turn to. Nobody knows, and like, when people do find somebody that they think that they can trust, there is invariably someone who thinks that that person you should trust is untrustworthy. And that's largely because the person that they trust says that you shouldn't trust that person, right? Which I really hate it when that happens, right? I will never, like, this is why I don't like that I don't like small criticisms. I don't like the, like, little kind of sniping that I see a lot in channels. That if I'm going to criticize someone, I'm going to criticize them in a manner that I think is central or core. Somebody like Ben Shapiro, right? Like, you can always critique Ben Shapiro because that guy's a fascist, right? Like, and those are the lines upon which I want to be critiquing people. But we've spread so many lies into the populace. We've spread so much disinformation into the populace that is it surprising that we've ended up this way? Is it surprising that one of the largest protest movements here in Toronto is an anti-mask protest? I went down to the anti-mask protest about 2 weeks ago, right? Because I was in the area and I thought, what the hell, let's pop in here, hand out some flyers, see if I can get some people out to my anti-poverty protest. None of them came because, you know, they don't actually give a shit about anything but themselves. And I talked to some of these guys, and these guys were literally saying that COVID doesn't exist. That they would direct me to people within their own movement to be like, you should listen to this guy. This is the guy that we all kind of listen to. And he, and for real, like, they're saying COVID doesn't exist. Like, this is the level that we're at right now, and it's scary. It's a scary place to be. I did not know that Ben Shapiro's sister YouTube.
All right. This video is a long time coming.
Hold on.
Okay, well, 2 weeks.
I don't genuinely care about listening to her.
I just want to say to the now hundreds of you.
Here, this I just wanted to see what she looks like. She does look like him. She does look like him. That's fun. She's got a big long neck.
It really felt like she polarized her followers into liberals and conservatives. And if you were not a liberal, she didn't want you listening to her. Well, all I can say is that I didn't really want to listen to her anymore.
And this is a simple...
I actually think that she could be more popular than Ben Shapiro. People are starting to come around. People are starting to come around on the fact that Ben Shapiro is a loser, right? Like, there was this great interview that Duncan Trussell went on Joe Rogan's show, and Duncan Trussell didn't try to, like, dismantle Ben Shapiro's points, like, philosophically or something. Duncan Trussell was just like, this guy's just a fucking nerd. Like, he's just a nerd, dude. Like, why are you listening to this nerd? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's an effective way to disarm sort of these knuckleheads who genuinely think that someone like Shapiro has something worthwhile to say, right? Like, Ben Shapiro's a total fucking loser. He's just a mama's boy. He never grew up past 5. He literally is just, like, got handed, like, he got born with a silver spoon in his mouth, got handed everything that he has, and thinks that he got there on his own, right? He's just a fucking loser. And I'm not surprised to see his sister trying to get into the game. She'll probably be more successful than him in the long run, because people are kind of coming around on the idea that Shapiro's just kind of a loser. Whereas, you know, his sister's kind of hot, actually. Like, I gotta be straight with you. Like, yeah, he gets paid by oil billionaires for sure. What was her name? Abby Shapiro? Like, here's the picture, guys. Here's the picture, right? Yeah, she looks a lot like him, man. She looks a lot like... Who knew that a feminized version of Ben Shapiro would actually end up being kind of attractive? Guys, I'm getting so confused now. I'm having confused feelings. I'm having confused feelings. Oh yeah. From Existential Comics, always worth talking about. Lord of the Rings is considered a fantasy because the trees win the battle against industrialization. Yeah. Always got to bring it down, right? Always got to bring it down from Existential Comics. The funny thing, I say this all the time on this channel, is that the trees can win the battle against industrialization, right? It's just, you know, we need to quit this bullshit. We need to quit this bullshit. Here's a great article. Actually comes from the NDP itself, but is pretty important, I think. Pretty useful information here. 14 times Justin Trudeau gave the ultra-rich a free ride. When he refused calls to crack down against fee hikes from Canada's big five banks in the middle of the pandemic, when he teamed up with Aaron O'Toole to vote against taxing the ultra-rich, when he let big corporations use the emergency wage fund to funnel millions to their CEOs, and on and on and on it goes, right? When he protected big telecoms and voted against ending price gouging by the big three. Yep. It's... I think she got in a big hypocrisy scheme because she posted nudes, then criticized other for nudity. This is just the gift that keeps on giving, bud. This story that you're telling. Like, all right. I'm not spending any more time on Abby Shapiro and the Shapiros, okay? Like, they get enough screen time as it is. They're way more inflated as it is. And certainly, we shouldn't be letting everybody know that Abby Shapiro, who is actually kind of hot, has nudes. Exactly. Don't Google that, okay? Don't Google Abby Shapiro nudes. Don't do that. It is important to the integrity of the people to not do the thing that you are definitely going to do. Shut up. You're all doing it right now. You're all doing it right now. You know you are. You. I don't know. That's fine. Yeah, if you're going to release nudes, and like, why criticize anyone for nudity? Like, I don't understand. Who cares? I am to this point now. Like, we're at a point in our culture where, for God's sakes, you can type in boobies into Google, and Google will be like, boobies, right? It won't even try. It's not even going to try to stop you, right? It's not going to be like, are you sure? Age restriction, any of this kind of stuff. You can go Google boobies, image search, boom. What do you want? Right? And like, you can get real specific and you can do all this kind of stuff. So in this environment where it's just like, it used to be that you had to like go to a store, buy a magazine, right? Like, you had to like go to a place, get like a raunchy video or something, right? But like, now it's just like right at your fingertips. And so why would anyone critique anyone of anything ever for any reason? And on top of that, like, one of the things I'm actually really glad that has happened in the celebrity culture, like, I remember in the 90s, so like not very long ago, if nudes got leaked, like if a woman had a picture taken and she was nude and it got leaked, it could end her career. It was like a career-ending moment, where, oh, her nudes came out and she's a scandalous woman and we can't tolerate that here. And now we're in a situation where, who was it? The Mockingjay lady. What's her name? Oh, for goodness sakes, that's gonna kill me. That's gonna kill me. Not the Hunger Games actress. Come on, Jennifer Lawrence. Like, Jennifer Lawrence had a nude thing where, like, a couple years ago, right, some nudes leaked and all this kind of stuff, and people, like, grumbled about it, but nobody gives a shit. Like, nobody gives a shit at all, right? Well, because, like, I just think that, like, it's the millennial generation especially, who is the first that kind of got inundated with the internet, the millennial generation just got to a point where they were like, yeah, tits, like, get over it, right? Like, the whole free the nipple movement, right? Like, most people, I think, are like, yeah, this is really fucking stupid. Like, this whole, like, we are really hung up on this absurd notion that the female body, by default, is sexualized, right? And then what's always hilarious to me is that if you actually are around nude people, like nude men and women, you're just like, yeah, well, like, go to a nude beach. There'll be nude people walking around. And maybe for a moment you'll be like, hoo-hoo, titter, titter, because it's novel and new to you as, like, a child that has yet to grow up. But very quickly you're just like, yeah, they're there, whatever. Yeah. It's not, it's, and we were destroying people's careers over this shit. Like, it's so fucking embarrassing. Even the Captain America guy's nudes leaked too. Well, in my view, it's getting to the point. I think some of these celebs are doing it on purpose, right? That they know that it's going to happen. Hey, Victini, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. I didn't actually say bye to you at the last protest, and I felt bad about it, mate. I meant to. I meant to come by and kind of give you a fist bump and say thanks for coming out, bud. Sorry about that. I'm really, really bad face to face. I'm not a good face to face kind of person. I think some of these celebrities are starting to release their nudes on purpose, right? That they know it's going to happen eventually. They know that it's going to, and so they want to do it on their own terms and control when it's happening, right? Crouching. Stop trying to get people to Google Abby Shapiro nude pics. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, we went from controversy kills to controversy sells, and now it's getting to be, like, not even controversy, in my view. Like, it's just getting to be like, I know for me, like, I find out a celebrity nude leaks, and I'm like, uh-huh, and I just kind of move on with my life. Like, who is the person that's, like, losing their mind about this anymore? Who's the and for somebody like this Abby Shapiro lady to stand up and say, exactly, Victini. Kardashian's whole social media presence is based on a sex tape released on purpose. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, my kids were never messed up on nudity or sex, but we lived in Spain, so none of this is important or unusual. Yeah, like, there are cultures that are so much more loose than we are. And, like, and the reason why I'm really hammering on this, right, is because I genuinely do think that a lot of our problems stem from this repressed, regressive view we have of basic sexuality and basic, like, nudity, right? Like, that we have this really regressive view of even our own bodies and even our own selves. And if we have these kind of pent-up, regressive views of the most basic shit that exists, right? Nudity and sex is the most basic shit. It doesn't get more basic, right? And you're telling me we have, like, this whole structure of, like, discomfort and shame and accusing people of calling people perverts and all of this kind of shit around this, like, extremely basic, normal human function and way of being. There's something wrong with our culture, right? There's something wrong with our culture if we are doing that and we are saying that. Okay, hold on, give me a second. My puppy is just going crazy, and he's just like, throw this, throw the toy, throw the toy, throw the toy. Oh, the toy got thrown. Nice, buddy, nice. Taliban enters the chat. Yeah, they got their own shit going on, dude. They got their own shit going on. Those guys are stuck in the 14th century, right? Like, those guys are stuck in the 14th century, where, like, women are still property, and, like, they got their own shit going on. So we gotta leave them alone. and let them figure that shit out. We gotta leave them alone and let them figure that shit out. Repression is like creating an oil deposit to exploit later. Oh, that's a nice quote, Bumble Guppy. I like that a lot. Repression is like creating an oil deposit to exploit later. That I like that a lot because it does put it in these kind of like if you're a capitalist, right, you're always looking for something to exploit. You're always looking for some way to commodify things. And so if you create like a repressive culture and you live in a repressive culture, then that means you can sell sex, right? But if nobody cares, if everybody's just like, whatever, then you can't sell, right? So you got to create this kind of like culture of repression in order to actually sell something. Maybe ISIS is here and just saying they are Taliban. Yeah, that'd be hilarious. Just like undercover Taliban. There you go. There's the next great like American film, Undercover Taliban. I think America needs to start focusing on itself and stop focusing on other people. So here's a great example of moving on from the nudity conversation into here is a really great example in my view of manufactured consent, right? That here is an article, comes out of CTV News, right? Federal Election 2021 Platform Guide. Where do the parties stand? And you go down to the climate change and energy, right? And they're talking like, okay, yeah, these are their plans and all this kind of stuff. Go to the NDP, right? During the 2019 campaign, NDP leader Jugmeet Singh memorably dismissed Liberal leader Justin Trudeau's environmental record with 4 years. You bought a pipeline. Since then, the two have more or less been in agreement on the climate file, with the NDP backing the Liberals' net zero bill. It remains to be seen if Singh will use this election to once again set his party apart from the Liberals on climate matters. Okay, great. Where is the mention of Singh's promise to eliminate oil subsidies? Doesn't exist, right? So if you are just sort of like a clueless, liberal type, reading this, hoping to be like, yeah, this will be how I get my information about who to vote for. Well, key information is missing. And this is how the media and capitalists generally maintain order. It's not through overt, outright lies. It's through lies of omission. It's just don't give people all the information. Like, if I was reading this and I saw Jugmeet Singh has promised to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, I might be like, wow, yeah, I'm for sure for that, right? But just omit it, don't talk about it. And why? Because it doesn't help your owners, right? Very straightforward. And so this is like a very clear example of manufacturing consent coming out of CTV News, where they're not outright lying to you, right? But they're just not telling you everything. Okay, the Taliban executed ISIS leaders after Trump released 5,000 prisoners. The Taliban are considered moderate by ISIS. Yeah, it's crazy times, dude. Brevity is wit. That's right, he said end oil and gas subsidy even for cleaning up orphan wells because there was not enough oversight to make sure the money was spent there. Yeah, and like, honestly, like, you want to be genuine about fighting fossil fuels? Well, the first thing that we should definitely be doing, like, number one, right, is, well, stop giving those industries money, right? Like, oh, you want to kill that industry? You want to make sure that industry goes into a decline? Well, stop propping it up. Very, very straightforward. I mean, you guys know me, so I'm very much on board with the idea that, like, we should nationalize these, right? That the fossil fuel industry should be nationalized. But we're not ready for that. Like, we're not ready for that. We as a people are not ready to believe in the idea that the best way to organize a society is to organize it, right? We still believe that chaos will be the ultimate decider, that if we just let chaos reign, let the free market decide, that somehow that will benefit the society. But like, if somebody stands up and says, hey, don't you guys think that the best way to organize things is to actually organize it? Did I see Doug Ford and Avi Lewis debate? I didn't see it. I saw that Avi Lewis interview that you sent me, pissed off, at the Rational National. He seems like a real clever kind of a guy. Seems well spoken. If you guys don't know, Avi Lewis, I forget which. He's an NDP. No, there he is. What category is he in? Come on. What riding rather? NDP riding. Oh, that's the same guy. He's a film producer. Look at that. Shows how much I know. West Vancouver Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky County riding. How's that for a title, eh? West Vancouver Sunshine Coast Sea to Sky Country riding. That sounds like that was named by a fella who put on like a cowboy hat. Yeah, here we are, West Vancouver Sunshine Coast, sea to sky country. Check Discord. How long is this? You know what? This is only 7 minutes. Let's do it. Hold on. Can I organize this so that I'm still able to see chat? Here we go. So you know what? I'll just put it on YouTube. There you go. I know how to do things.
Donald Trump's chief strategist, Steve Bannon, announced there will be something called a new political order, an order driven by populism, by anger at politicians and elites, by economic nationalism, according to Bannon.
So just to be clear, this happened in February of 2017. So about 4 years ago. So this is pre Doug Ford's election.
As both the Conservatives and the NDP leadership races heat up in Canada, and this week, by the way, I should say, NDP MP Charlie Angus has thrown his hat into the ring. Those parties are at a crossroads. Is this the age of populism in Canada? And to find out, I'm joined now by Doug Ford, whose late brother Rob Ford, of course, was the famous populist mayor of Toronto. I'm also joined by Avi Lewis, one of the authors of the LEAP Manifesto, which has urged political parties and had a big impact.
Sorry, I gotta point it out, dude. Doug Ford always looks like a 5-year-old getting his picture taken. He always looks like a 5-year-old getting his picture taken. Look at this guy, dude.
NDP MP Charlie Angus has thrown his hat into the ring. Those parties are at a crossroads. Is this the age of populism in Canada? To find out, I'm joined now by Doug Ford, whose late brother Rob Ford, of course, was the famous
he doesn't know where to look.
Mayor of Toronto.
He's got this weird little smile on his face, like
of the LEAP Manifesto, which has urged political parties and had a big impact on the NDP to make very dramatic changes to government policies. Avi and Doug, great to see you both on the program.
Great being here.
All right,
Hi there.
Doug Ford, a lot of people say that what you and your brother did was really the precursor to the populism of Donald Trump. Do you buy that?
I buy it. I always say Donald Trump and Rob aren't very similar. The movement's very similar, but we saw it with Brexit. Rob blazed the trail for a populist movement. And I always want to remind people that our base is made up of 40% of traditional NDP voters, union members, 49% of traditional Liberal voters, and some fiscal conservatives.
Well, this is it. And Avi Lewis, this has been interesting because Donald Trump on Friday said a similar thing. He said the working class person is part of the Trump movement. That used to be the bedrock of the NDP. What happened here?
Well, you know, there's definitely a problem with right-wing populism. It is fundamental. It goes to its core. Right-wing populism runs about as deep as TV makeup. It's about as real as wrestling. Right-wing populism, you can call every constituent you want, you can connect with working people, and you can go and pick up their garbage. But the policies, the right-wing economic policies, hurt those most vulnerable people and hurt working people. That was the case under the Ford administration here in Toronto. It's been the case under Harper. It's
really?
the case under Trump. Yeah,
Wow.
you know. Well, go ahead, Doug.
Well, you know something that hurts people. What really hurts people is when you're getting your backside taxed off. When they go door to door and they can't afford the hydro rates because their hydro rates are as expensive as basically their mortgage. And when they try to bring home, you know, they're making $30,000, $40,000 a year, working in the back of a factory, and the vast majority of their money goes to taxes. That's what hurts people. I know it firsthand. I've door knocked. I hear the people, and you keep saying the right wing.
Rob was not the right wing. He
But
was fiscally
associated,
conservative.
okay, but associated with the conservative, you talked at the conservative conference, the Manning Center.
Yeah.
The future of the conservative party is at stake. And they're talking, is it going to be a libertarian party of Max Bernier? Is it going to be fiscal conservative and social liberal? What's your pitch for the future of the conservative party?
Well, I think the conservatives, along with all the parties, we still have in the conservatives, liberals, and NDP are the political elites. That the political establishment.
What does that mean?
Well, the political elites. I'll give
Come
you
on,
an
this is-
example.
this is-
I'll give
this
you a
is-
political
this is
elite.
hilarious. This is just plain
I'll tell you,
hilarious.
the political elites.
Doug,
that have
that's
my buddy
you.
Abby on the
Doug,
other
man,
side.
that's
John Tory is
you.
the political elites. You know, we hang out with the blue collar folks. We don't hang out at these posh clubs and, you know, everyone that looks down on the common person that doesn't donate $1,000 to the campaign.
A scintilla
Okay,
of
go
reality
ahead,
to this
Lewis.
conversation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Doug, the Integrity Commissioner in Toronto found that you had used your office to benefit
isn't that
clients
good?
of your company improperly.
So
and you
that's
got
a false
tickets
accusation right there.
You got tickets to the Rogers tennis tournament.
No,
so
that's-
how
see, you
many
don't
of
even-
your
you
blue collar
don't- see,
constituents
this is-
were sitting in the $200 seats with you?
No. See,
Right?
this is
let
where
me
you
make
got
a
it
more
all
substantive
wrong.
point.
Hang
Let
on.
me make a more substantive point.
Yeah.
You preach populism, and populism is definitely like the EMTs for a right-wing economic movement that is otherwise on life support. It is the savior of right-wing economics, but you practice the politics of austerity. You slashed 62 transit routes. You tried to close libraries. You said you'd do it in a heartbeat. You
Can I respond for a
took
minute?
money out of
I can't, but I wanna do
services for those
that.
very
I know,
people
I know.
that you claim are your friends in
I
your
got a minute here,
constituency.
but let me ask Avi Lewis.
Well, first of all, what he said wasn't true and it's
okay.
not accurate,
Let
so
me just-
he's wrong on that. But-
Well,
Talk
that's
about populism,
a lie,
Avi Lewis.
obviously.
You're one of the
Let's
co-authors. Just a
footnote
second.
those facts
Of
anytime you're ready.
of the-
I'm ready to go deep into the weeds on the facts.
Oh,
Okay.
but
you
hang
can go
on.
deep
On
all
the
you
LEAP-
want. You don't have a clue what you're
on the
talking
LEAP
about. That's a
manifesto,
problem.
gents, on the LEAP manifesto.
Yeah.
I want to just ask Avi Lewis. There's a leadership race going on for the NDP. Avi Lewis, what direction does the NDP have to go?
But look how this guy just covered for all that, right? This guy made a very big claim, right? That the Ford administration's policies are policies of austerity, right? Gave specific examples. Doug Ford just denied it, right? Flatly, and now we're moving on, right? So this guy's covering, right? He's not saying like, oh, okay, wait a minute. You just made a claim. You just denied it. My job as the journalist is, if we have a disagreement like that, is to find out what the truth is and to actually present it. He didn't do that. He's covered it over and he's moved on, right? That's how the media works. That the media exists to cover stuff like this over so that you can just choose which one of these guys you want to believe. You don't need to have a third party saying like, actually, right?
to try to revitalize its fortunes?
Well, you know, the ascendance of Trump, of crypto-fascism in populist makeup, is very, very scary. But in some ways, let's be honest, it is a failure of the left. You have an NDP that's moved so far to the center now that it's scared of its left-wing shadow. Bernie Sanders, had the right-wing Democratic machine not locked him out of the possibility, of the true possibility of winning the primary, or had he won the primary, he would have given Trump a run for his money, because Bernie talked about taxing banks, taxing corporations, and redistributing money to the people who don't have enough. Why is the NDP not following right down that path? There's two Canadians, Galen Weston and David Thompson, who control as much wealth as a third of us, as 10 million Canadians. We got to take their money away and share it in revitalized public services that benefit everyone. That's left-wing populism. That is the future of the left. If we don't, we'll have fascism in the United States.
Okay, last, I got 30 seconds.
God help us, Avi.
He calls this fascism.
God help us if we ever let you take care of the finances. You're going after the Weston family? You got to be kidding. That creates tens of thousands of jobs. That were entrepreneurs in this country that are out there creating jobs, paying taxes.
You're
showing your true feelings about our elites. The richest two people in Canada are people who admire
I got 10 seconds.
There's where we fall on the elitism.
That's the difference between the left and the right. You always try to interrupt.
Okay, I got 10 seconds.
Isn't it great? Entrepreneurs are great. They create jobs, protect the little guy. Do you know what you guys are? You're nothing but a bunch of poverty pimps You know, you don't help the people that are on poverty. Unlike Rob and I used to go help people. You just want to jump on the back of their coattail.
So here's what's interesting. Here's something about Doug Ford, and I don't know. I do think that Doug Ford has sort of sniffed his own shit and thinks that it smells great, and I think that he's drank his own Kool-Aid, right? That he believes what he says, all right? And this is what's actually really interesting about the Fords, in my perspective, is that, like, Doug Ford and they built their whole dynasty, their whole thing was built off of the idea that if you give them a call, okay.
This I agree. Let's give more money to Galen. Let's give more money to Galen Weston.
That's right. You know, God bless the Weston family. That's what I have to say. We need
more people like the Weston. That solves the populism question right there.
Doug Ford and Avi Lewis, if you ever thought that the leadership race for the Conservative Party and the NDP matters, well, check out the Passions of the Debate.
That solves the populism question right there. Yes, it does. So, but this is what's interesting about Doug Ford, and why I think he's been successful, and why he may continue to be successful, all right? The idea that he's just going to get ousted in the next election, it's not a gimme. It's not a gimme. His opposition is very weak. It's very weak. And where Doug Ford is strong on 2 points, okay? Point number one, he actually picks up the phone, he actually talks to people, he actually goes to places, and he actually attempts to resolve their grievances. When he was when Rob Ford was the MP or the city councilor, people could call him and they'd say, like, hey, I've got a pothole, and he would show up with a truck full of asphalt and he'd fill all the potholes, right? Now, of course, he can do that because he's a rich dude, right? He's got the money to just be able to do it, right? But he would. And people really value this about the Fords, that if you call their number, they pick up. And if they don't and you leave a message, they call you back, right? And they talk to you. They do it. It's not some other person. It's not some organizer. It's not some assistant or anything. It's them. They're doing it. So in terms of, like, actually doing the work, they are doing that. You cannot take this away from these guys. But the thing is that, and then point number two, they have a strong narrative that they believe, because they view themselves as sort of Western sheriffs, right? Like gunslingers, right? They're just like, they're going to come in and they're going to solve all the problems, right? They're going to come in and they do. They come in like gunslingers and all this kind of stuff. But it turns out that gunslingers don't make good governors, right? Because you can't gunsling away homelessness. You can't gunsling away poverty. You can't gunsling this stuff away. And a guy like Doug Ford genuinely does believe that if we give all of the money to Galen Weston, David Thompson, then they'll create jobs for everyone. And if you can't get a job, it's because you suck. You're not good at being a gunslinger, right? That they have no contemplation in their mind whatsoever of the idea that people can't get work. People can't get connected in this system, as he is committing austerity against them. And this is where Doug Ford does take the leap from being just an ideologue into being duplicitous. Because his denial of the fact that he has committed austerity against the populace is a lie. And this guy right here, I 100% put it on this fellow right here. Like, fact check that shit, dude. Even Joe Rogan has a fact checker, right? Get a fucking fact checker, right? Be like, hey, this guy just made a claim about you committing austerity. You did, right? No bullshit. You did. Why are you lying about it, right? Don't bullshit us, right? And Doug Ford, that's where he is an enormous bullshitter. The Doug Ford administration has been one of massive austerity. It's been an enormous austerian government. They've eliminated 700 climate change proposals, right? Not proposals, plans, things that were actually working. Oh, for God's sakes! Like, it's actually really the cuts in Doug Ford's first year. Here you go. From National Observer, everything the Doug Ford office cut in its first year. You can go down, right? Canceled cap and trade, a disaster. Ended electric and hydrogen vehicle incentive program, a disaster. Cut 700 plus green energy projects, a disaster. Shut down White Pines wind project, a disaster. Each point is a complete eliminated funding for 50 million tree program, a complete and total disaster. Every single point. And then you can go on to health. Canceled free prescription medication for those under 25. Canceled the opening of new overdose prevention sites. Cut the Liberals' promised $2 billion over 4 years for new mental health funding. Revoked the future funding for, and it just goes on and 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 on like this. And the idea that this guy, when Avi correctly points this out and Doug Ford flatly denies it, the idea that this guy isn't going, wait a minute, let's pull up the facts. This is the facts. What's up with that? Tells you who he works for. Who does this guy work for, do you think? Do you think this guy works for Doug Ford, or do you think this guy works for Avi? Which one of these two guys do you think this guy's working for? Right? Right? But Doug Ford's popularity makes complete and total sense, right? He knows exactly who he cares about. He cares about taxpayers, rich people. And if you call him, he goes and tries to solve your problem, right? Anyway, that was a really good one right there. And Doug Ford, his real strength, if you ask me, is his sort of dopey everymanness, right? Like when he does this stuff, like he did at the end here, where he was like, jobs, and they just talk over you and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that plays, man. That plays, right? Like, people like that. People see, like, he's kind of buffoonish and goofy, but people don't mind that, right? People don't mind that. What they see when they look at Doug Ford is a guy who, and especially if you're one of these rich, taxpayers, right? If you're one of these rich people who are disconnected from the reality of what's going on the ground, and you don't have journalists who are actually attempting to fact check. You don't have journalists who are actually saying to Doug Ford, hey, whoa, you did commit austerity. Like, this is an austerian government, right? Like, if you don't have journalists actually dispensing the facts and actually telling you what's going to happen or what is happening, right? Then you can just look at Doug Ford and you can look at this guy and just go, what's the problem? Just get a job, right? Right? Like, Doug Ford, he's doing all this stuff so that everybody can go get jobs. Well, just go get one. Just go get one of these jobs. Because jobs are all over the place, right? Noam Chomsky called out an interviewer once, pointing out the media ownership may not script him, but if the interviewer didn't already agree with them, they wouldn't have a job. Yeah, that's manufacturing consent, right? Like, and a guy like this, like, the way that you get journalists jobs here in North America is that you get good grades in school, right? And how do you get good grades in school? You do what you're told, right? That's how you get good grades in school. You just do what you're told. You don't question it. You don't rebel against it. You don't. And the person who does what they're told the best is the person that gets the best grades, right? And so you go through high school and then you go into university, right? And you just do what you're told, right? And the person who does what they're told the best gets the best grades, and then goes on and gets the best job. And if you want to get into journalism and you want to get into that kind of stuff, well, what are you going to do? You're going to keep doing what you're told, right? Because that's what you did all the way through school. That's what you did all the way through university. And that's what you're going to do all the way through this job. You're going to do what you're told. And if you don't do what you're told, then you don't get the job and you don't stick around, right? Because doing what you're told is what our educational system vets for. It's the number one thing. Do what you're told or you get a C. Do what you're told or you don't get good grades, right? Try not doing what you're told in school. What happens, right? Right? So they're vetting for obedience. They're vetting for subservience from the base level. from literally when you are the age of 5 onward. When you are a 5-year-old and up, they are vetting for do what you're told. And if you want to have unique ideas, if you want to think about things differently, if you want to challenge something that you're being taught, well, then you're not going to get good grades. You're not going to move on, right? It kind of depends on how nice the teacher is, though. That's true, Drew. But I would argue that teachers themselves are incentivized to fall into this pattern of just do what I say, right? Just obey me. Just do what I say. And it doesn't. Are there any journalists that are gone that you miss? There will be soon. I will miss Chris Hedges when he goes. I will miss Noam Chomsky, obviously, when Chomsky goes. And we have very clear examples of people who stood up against the kind of common knowledge. What was his name? Why am I forgetting this guy's name? White hair, Phil Donahue. When I believe it was the Iraq War started, Phil Donahue spoke out against it, and he's gone, right? Like, he's just gone. They chased him right out. And you can see this happen over and over again. That, like, if you just don't do what you're told, yeah, Afghan journalists are going to disappear. Yep. But my jobs! And, like, what is this manic plunge for jobs? Like, I feel like the phrase, what are you going to do when you grow up? Or what do you do for a living? Right? These are embedded propaganda pieces that exist in our culture. Like, shouldn't our culture be trying to eliminate as many jobs as possible? Shouldn't we want it so that we know what jobs are necessary to do for the functioning of our society, and we spread people throughout those jobs so that as little burden is put on the populace as possible to ensure, like, because there are things that I think we all want to see, right? We want power in the society, right? We want electricity, right? We want heat, right? We want food, right? There's a good one. We want sanitation, right? There's great stuff, right? But instead of funneling everybody into that to distribute as little labor as possible, and then ensuring that everybody is kind of taken care of, we insist that everyone has to sell themselves. And this is what I hear when I say job. When I hear somebody say job in this, I hear sell yourself to a billionaire. That's what I hear. Through a process called wage slavery, right? That people like Doug Ford are enforcing a wage slave system. That's what it is. It's very nakedly done. It's very open, but no one is willing. And the wage slaves themselves, jokingly, kind of with a wink and a nod at one another, call themselves wage slaves. My entire life growing up, people would do this, where they'd be like, "Oh yeah, just slaving away. Gotta be a wage slave." Right? And they would just say it like this as if it was like a flippant thing, but it was the goddamn truth. It was literally the truth. But they're so powerless, they're so unable to actually gather any force and get anybody in the political sector to actually talk about the reality of wage slavery, that they just kind of say it with a shrug and a sigh, in kind of the pale hope that maybe the younger generation will glom onto the fact that we're being sold into wage slavery, being propped up by people like Doug Ford. And if you stand up and you actually call the system what it is, which is a system of wage slavery, then the simps for capitalism are like, "Oh, you're so hyperbolic. Oh, it's so overwrought. Oh, it's so this." And this is a way to gaslight you, right? This is a way to gaslight you and shame you into refusing to use appropriate language and accurately call the system what it is. This is a wage slave system, right? You work for people who pay you wages, or you starve and die. And if you don't like them, you can go find another slaver, right? That the people that own us, you never meet, you never know who they are, right? You never shake their hand, you never see them, and they own you. And they own you. And if they want to, they can just say, get rid of that guy, right? Which they did en masse throughout this pandemic. The wage slave system that exists in this culture is the number one thing that we need to dismantle. That we need to erect institutional systems through the state in order to ensure everyone has food and everyone has shelter as a baseline, and that it is a crime if a politician attempts to withhold these things from the populace, that it is a high crime to do that. And once everyone has their food and shelter accounted for, then you can start talking about, well, what job is meaningful and what isn't, and who gives a shit. Why are we giving subsidies to this? Why are we giving anything to this? I'm genuinely of the opinion that we should just remove all of these subsidies completely, nationalize the shit that we consider valuable, like the telecom industry, like the food industry, like the fossil fuel, the energy sector, right? The fact that these aren't responsive to the will of the populace tells you that the system has lost its mind, right? All of those should be nationalized, and then everything else is just yeah, who cares? Who gives a shit if Cinnabon collapses? Who gives a shit if Starbucks suddenly can't make a go of it? Who gives a fuck at all, right? Especially if when it collapses, the workers are oh, well, I'm going to have my food and my shelter taken care of and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to work that job anymore. Okay, well, what's next, right? But that's not how the society is structured. That we haven't structured the society for the benefit of the populace. We've structured the society for the benefit of Galen Weston and David Thompson, who straight up do not give a fuck about us. Oh yeah, it's going to be sad when Wolf goes for sure. Onward is saying, I wanted to be a graveyard night watchman, but nobody cared about my dreams. I would think that being a graveyard night watchman was actually, that seems quite attainable. When I grow up, I want to work for Walmart or Mickey D's, exactly. I wanted to be a botanist, but I'm too stupid, sadly. Oh, that's not good to say about yourself, Bubble Company. It just didn't quite connect. Well, and also, I find that there's lots of jobs and there's lots of professions that require this academic backing that don't need it. Straight up that don't need it. I don't see why you need to have a big university degree to become a botanist. Doesn't make sense to me. A lot of us have no capital other than the hours of our lives to sell. Yeah, that's the wage slave system, right? Oh, you don't have any capital to withhold from the public, right? You don't own any housing that you can withhold from the populace and then force them to pay 50% of their wage in order to use. Well, then you gotta sell yourself. People that hate cooking are making my burger and it tastes like despair. Yeah, water will soon need to be nationalized for sure. Debt is the principal institution of modern Western slavery, but can we just take a moment to acknowledge that the experience of slaves who experience more lethal courage is diminished by the one-to comparison? Yeah, I mean, chattel slavery is certainly a more violent system, for sure. The elimination of chattel slavery, and to eliminate chattel slavery, the Americans had to fight a fucking civil war. It was a brutal, grueling experience. And the experience, absolutely, of chattel slaves. There are stories where, a chattel slave would refuse to eat, so they would break the front two teeth off and force a funnel into the gap that was left to force feed them, right? Yeah, I mean, absolutely no. I'm not attempting to say that wage slavery and chattel slavery are equivalents. And in fact, chattel slavery is a far more violent system. That the wage slave system that we operate under now, at least we our owners aren't allowed to do physical violence to us the way that the chattel slaves owners were able to do. But it doesn't change the fact that it's still a wage slave system. That Abraham Lincoln called it a wage slave system. The chattel slavers called it a wage slave system. that the system we operate under now is a wage slave system. And just because it's less violent directly than the chattel slave system doesn't change the fact that it's still a slave system, right? And I would like to live in a system that is not a slave system. I would like to continue the abolition of slavery, that we have our predecessors to thank for the abolition of chattel slavery, and we should continue their work and continue to abolish all forms of slavery. The hurricane headed for Louisiana is now expected to hit land with 120 mile per hour winds. Pray for Louisiana, man. Pray for Louisiana. I hope we don't get the same situation that happened under Bush, where those people are abandoned. I think the skills don't need the same education than the scientists, but are more worthwhile to everyday life and a livable wage, yeah. But homelessness and hunger under wage slavery is not a small coercion, exactly. I agree, it is a slave system. Well, and the chattel slavers, here's an interesting bit of trivia for you. The chattel slaveries on the lead up to the Civil War actually argued that chattel slavery was a more preferable form of slavery than wage slavery. And their logic was that if work dried up, like if there was no work to do, the owner of a chattel slave still had to pay for that slave's food and shelter. That the well-being of that slave was still needed to be considered by the owner. That he's a piece of property and you got to take care of it, right? Like you would a cow or a horse. And just because there's no work doesn't mean that you can discard your slave. You still had to feed them. You still needed to shelter them, right? Whereas under a wage slave system, if the work dried up, well, the owner just stopped paying the slave, right? And then the slave would have to scramble around and try to find food and shelter for himself. And if there was no work, well, then the slave would need to leave and would be completely abandoned by the society. This is the chattel slaveries of the South saying this. So, and this is something completely acknowledged by Abraham Lincoln and that group. Abraham Lincoln ran on a platform of abolishing wage slavery. So, like, this idea that we don't live in a wage slave system, it's not based in any reality that I'm familiar with, and it's never talked about. And in fact, if you do talk about it, the slavers themselves, people like Doug Ford, they'll just give you, come on, man, that's the best they've got, right? But that's going to work, right? That's going to work because the populace, especially people who are sort of in those middle class, upper class jobs, they don't consider themselves slaves. And the best slave you can have is one that doesn't consider himself a slave. That if the chattel slavers in the South could have convinced the slaves, the black slaves that they owned, that they were not slaves, that would have been an enormous achievement. And one of the great achievements of neoliberal capitalism is convincing wage slaves that they are not slaves, that they are in fact free people, and that they're free because they can leave this job and go work another job, even though both those jobs are owned by the same billionaire. Like, it's easily one of the largest pieces of propaganda that we tell ourselves, and one of the largest lies that we tell ourselves, that we live in a free civil society. Like, no, you don't. If you're receiving a wage, and especially a wage from a person you've never met, right? You've never met your owner, you're a slave. It's very clear. Like, it's very obvious that is the case. And the only reason that we don't acknowledge it is because it's really hard to do that. It's hard to admit to yourself and to the people around you that you're a slave. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. It does something to your soul, right? It hurts you in a fundamental kind of a way. And the kind of isolation that exists in admitting the truth of this, and then dealing with the denialism that exists from people who you care about. People like your parents will deny this sort of stuff, right? Will live in this delusional sort of state. When the reality is like you're working for a wage that doesn't even pay your rent, for a person you've never met, and the only recourse you have is to go get another job that doesn't pay your rent for a person you've never met. And if you actually connect the dots, you find out that those jobs are both owned by the same person. It's a wage slave system, and we need to abolish it. Like, we need to abolish it. It must be abolished. And the way to abolish this is to provide food and shelter for everyone, free of charge, no negotiation. If you're alive, you get it. And to start operating from there. Okay, I'm going to play a song. Some of you have heard this song, some of you haven't. First, I'm going to give some peanut butter to my dog, because he's just looking at the Kong being like, please, John, give me peanut butter. Give me peanut butter. There you go, buddy. So if you haven't heard this song, I call this song the Care Bear Stare against the capitalist system. It makes me feel really good to play it, and I hope you love it too. The title of this piece is Antarctica is Covered in Ice. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm old? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we'll learn a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat, and Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice when everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know that we can do it. I know that we can do it. Because the solutions to our problem could not be any easier. That all we have to do, we don't need to create a technology, we don't need to enact a big scale change in any of this kind of stuff. We don't need to do anything. In fact, doing anything is exactly the problem. What we need is to stop. That if all we do is stop what we are doing, then we will sit back and watch in awe as the earth heals itself. That this place was a garden before we got here. It'll be a garden after we're gone. And if we want to be here to witness the transformation, to witness the miraculous healing that the earth will achieve on its own, then all we have to do is stop. Well, here's as good a time as any to remind all of you, please like, please share, please subscribe, please send it around. If you've got $1 jangling around in your pocket, please consider donating to my Patreon. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you for being here. Bless each and every one of you. Bless each and every one of you. I can tell that people don't know what to do. I can tell. Take a look at this election, for God's sakes. People don't know what to do. People don't know where to turn. People are confused. Everything feels like it's coming apart at the seams because it is coming apart at the seams, and people don't know where to go. They don't know what to believe. They don't know what to think. And I hope that we can get to a point where when you find yourself in a period of confusion like this, the best thing to do is to take a moment to slow on down and to stop doing what it is you're doing. Because maybe the thing that you think you need to do, you don't. And maybe the thing that you think is the most important thing in the world is not. And maybe you need to take a moment to just evaluate and to consider. And if we all did that all together and looked at one another not as products to be consumed or exploited, but as equals, as divine beings standing in divine energy, or quantum energy if you prefer. If we looked at one another that way, then in the time it would take for us to rebuild an economy and a society, that the earth would already have fixed our problem for us. The earth wants to be a garden. It created itself as a garden. We came up in it as a garden. And that it's us that are turning it into something other than that. And I think it would be rather nice, don't you? I think it would be rather nice living in a world where everyone is just calmly existing, gently living, talking to one another, finding out what's going on, working at work that is important. This is the big thing that really kills me about this society, if you want to call it that. I don't call Canada a society. Canada's a business. Canada's a business with a PR team, with a HR department. The thing that really kills me is how many of us are doing worthless work. How many of us are doing work that is completely without value whatsoever. David Graeber actually pegged a number to it. He's an economist, an important economist. He was one of the central organizers for the Occupy Wall Street movement. And in his book, he wrote a book called Bullshit Jobs. And in that book, he said that about 30% of jobs that exist are bullshit. They achieve nothing. They do nothing important. And the people who are working them are aware of it. Imagine that. Imagine 30% of your workforce if you just freed them from that. If you just said, hey, these worthless jobs that are achieving nothing and doing nothing important whatsoever, you no longer have to do. Suddenly you'd have 30%, and spread the work that must be done into that 30%. Alleviate everybody's tension, alleviate all of this. But that would require central organization. Because it turns out that if you want to organize an economy, then you have to actually organize it. Big shocker, right? Big shocker. If you actually want to organize an economy, you have to actually organize it. That you can't just throw your hands up and say, well, the free market will decide. Yeah, the free market will decide. The free market will decide to destroy you. Because that's how chaos works. Chaos doesn't work for you. Chaos works for itself. And if you fall into worshiping chaos, more the fool you. Yeah, look at what China is doing, right? Look at what China is doing. China is enacting a series of miracles, and it's going to get extremely obvious. I keep saying this about China, that if you, in 10 years' time, if things continue on this trajectory, in 10 years' time, China is going to make the West look like a fucking barbaric shithole. It's going to embarrass the West. The West is literally going to be this forgotten, squalling child off the coast of the actual world, which is where most of the rest of the world lives. That we're going to be seen mainly as bothersome. We're going to be seen as mainly a nuisance to the powers of China and Russia rising on the Asian continent. And there's very little sign that is going to abate itself. What can the Americans do? They can't enact a full-scale war, any kind of proxy war that they get themselves into. And the biggest thing that the Americans are really struggling with when it comes to dealing with China, the biggest thing that the Americans are dealing with is that they do not respect that China is a 4,000-year-old civilization. That it has been playing this game of civilization building for literally 20 times longer than the United States has been around. That this absurdist bullying that the United States is doing on the world stage, the Chinese literally have dynastic periods of warlording that they can look to and be like, and we see what the consequence of that is. They've seen what the United States is doing, and they've learned from it, because the people who are running China actually do things like read books. They actually do things like learn and read literature and read other people's literature. Xi Jinping has read the entire works of William Shakespeare, right? Has Joe Biden read any Chinese literature, do you think? That's why the West is afraid of China and Russia, because they are taking care of basic needs and life. Exactly. Like, and this, one of the most heartbreaking things to watch, and I've been seeing it occasionally, and it does happen. I can't think of any one individual right at the moment, but there is starting to be people in the United States who are beginning to realize that this for-profit neoliberal rhetoric that they've been spewing out is bullshit. That there are people who are beginning to recant. There are people who are beginning to say, like, oh shit, this has not worked. And they're beginning to understand that the consequences of following on this failed ideology is death for their country. That's where the true heartbreak is. And that's why a lot of people will never face up to it, because it will break your heart. Can you imagine actually believing that free market capitalism was going to do anything except this? Can you imagine being one of these people who genuinely is walking around saying that capitalism is the best thing ever, only to be confronted by literally thousands and thousands, if not millions, of homeless people in your country, an uptick in starvation, the average life expectancy of the average American is in decline, right? The country is in decline, and there's nothing that's going to stop it. There's nothing that's going to stop it, because the people who are in charge in the United States are a rapacious, sociopathic death cult. They don't care about the base needs of the populace, right? They don't give a shit about that at all. Go ask China what happens when your warlords start acting that way, right? Go ask China. They know, right? They had a dynasty exactly like this. What happens? The country balkanizes, right? I have a book. It's all about this. I forget the name of the period offhand. This is a history of Asia, Rhodes Murphy, right? I got it used back when I was in university, right? So what happens? What happens? So your country balkanizes, right? Because each province becomes its own, like, warlord, right? Gets ruled like this, and there's no trust between anybody, because the people who are ruling it don't give a fuck about the citizens. They don't give a fuck about anything but their own power and prestige. So the country breaks apart. You have your own series of little warlords. Let's take this over here in the United States. So Texas breaks off. California breaks off, right? The southern states break off and create their own thing. And I'm not talking hyperbolically, guys. Like, some of these areas have, if you poll the people in them, some of these areas have as high as 66% of the people want to declare their independence from the federal government, right? Places like California, it's up at about 40%. 40% of Californians want to declare their independence from the federal government, which makes sense, right? So you're being heavily taxed by a federal government who refuses to turn around and provide even the most meager protections or basic needs. What are they spending their money on? This. They're spending their money over here to destroy Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, to erect a military base here in Jerusalem. Why would you want to be part of that? And so the Chinese are well aware what's going to happen in the United States. They've seen it. They've experienced it. Their 4,000-year-old culture has taught them that lesson already. that if you ignore the needs of the populace, that if you ignore the base food and shelter that the populace requires, the country balkanizes, breaks apart. And that's what's going to happen in the United States. The question is just who's first? Like, who's first? Who do you think is going to be first? I don't know. I don't really have an answer. I feel like I should take bets. What country do we think? I mean, Texas is the obvious suspect, right? And I'm free falling. If you want to vomit, just look at the YouTube comments on any video about the eviction moratorium. Yeah, and one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot recently is when countries begin to recover from the catastrophes, right? So here's a great example. Post-World War II Germany, right? Recovering from an obvious catastrophe, and an obvious political catastrophe, right? The Germans turned around and began to ask themselves, how the hell did this happen? How in God's green earth did this happen? How was it that we elected literally a goon who wrote a book that said in it we should round up the Jews and exterminate them, right? Mein Kampf was explicit. Mein Kampf didn't hide anything. And Hitler wrote that early, right? He didn't write that after he came into power. He didn't write that after the wars started or any of that. He wrote Mein Kampf as a young man. It was one of the first things he wrote. In fact, the distribution of Mein Kampf was part of what funded Hitler's political career. That, and of course, funding from industrialists, capitalists within Germany. So it's not like it was a secret. It's not like it was like this hidden thing. It was well known that Adolf Hitler wanted to murder the Jews. It was well known. And so how is it that happened? And the German people asked themselves this question. And one of the things that they realized is that they had expunged ethical lessons and ethical teaching from their secular school system. That they had secularized their school system, but they hadn't replaced the religious teachings, which come with things like ethics and morals, and you can disagree with that if you like, but it is true that if you remove even an attempt to teach ethics or morals through religious teaching and don't replace it with actual ethical, secularized ethics, well, what are you doing? You're raising a group of children who don't even consider and contemplate or dwell on the theory of ethics or morality at the outset. They don't view each other as equals. They don't view each other as part of communities, and they don't view each other as in need of support, and they don't take responsibility for one another. And so what have the German people done since? They've allowed the churches back into the school system to teach ethics. And if parents don't want their children taught ethics from like the Catholic Church or the Lutheran Church or the Protestant churches, then they take a secular ethics class, right? In an attempt to teach children the basics of what ethics are and what morality is. And I think we need to do the same thing. I would be a big proponent of this, that we should reform our education system to teach ethics. And we should do it right from kindergarten. That it should be reading, writing, arithmetic, and ethics. All the way up. And into university, right? That ethics should be a part of the fabric of our education system from the beginning. Because we're seeing the consequences. We're seeing the consequences of having an unethical, illiterate culture, because we do. Our culture doesn't give a shit about ethics. Our culture doesn't care about morality. Our culture doesn't give a shit about that at all. Because you can just go look at the YouTube comments on any videos about the eviction moratorium to find out, right? Like, people don't have critical thinking skills. People don't have morality skills. People don't have ethics. Compassion and empathy has not been taught. And it's having major consequences. And we can see them. We can see them. Yep, lots of popular American YouTubers really excited about it, right? Like, that's disgusting. That's disgusting. That's disgraceful. Imagine being excited about spreading suffering. Imagine being excited about spreading misery throughout the culture. Like, that's disgraceful. That's the fear of seeing the truth in front of your face versus looking on Facebook wishing the millionaire page is on you're on as a friend. Exactly, yeah. As an American, I hope it's Casadia? Oh, in terms of who leaves first, yeah. Oh, the poor landlords. Won't somebody think of the landlords, exactly. Ruth, your mother is still getting reparations after all this time. Fantastic. They should be teaching empathy and common sense as well, yeah. What about CRT in elementary school or older? Well, the critical race theory conversation is really embarrassing, actually. Like, it's the Koch brothers. The living Koch brother took his wealth and has started a campaign against critical race theory. Critical race theory is university-level academia, right? Like, nobody is talking about teaching critical race theory. Like, no leftists and no, like, critical race theorists or any of this are talking about teaching this in elementary school or older. It's completely being used as a wedge issue in order to allow right-wing fascists and racists to whitewash American history. It is not critical race theory to teach children that America enslaved black people. That is not critical race theory. That's basic shit. Like, that's basic historical teaching. It is not critical race theory to teach children that British and French colonists and Spanish colonists committed a genocide on the First Nations people. That is not critical race theory, right? The two are linked, certainly, but teaching children the basic history of how their country was founded is not critical race theory. And the propaganda being used against critical race theory by billionaires like David Koch and his brother Charles Koch, may he burn in hell forever. The propaganda being used is allowing legislators to go in and whitewash American history, to just turn American textbooks into racist propaganda tools, right? Where they're literally teaching kids that, white Americans were just in agreement with the First Nations. First Nations people live on reserves because they agreed to it. Like, that's the kind of shit. And it's completely disgraceful. It's incredibly disgusting. And the people who are perpetrating it, I hope, burn in hell. Lots of education reform along those lines will go a long way, yeah. Jail rewarding inmates with free ramen if they get vaccinated. Yeah, I'm pro-vax, but just how bad is their regular food? Bad. Like, imagine how, like, really accept, right, how little Americans give a shit about children. Like, children that they're supposed to be educating, right? How little do they actually give a fuck about those children, right? And then think to yourself, how much less do you think the average American cares about prisoners? And, like, there are stories, of course, of, like, ramen being used as currency. So in a way, it's like giving money. You know, it's an internal currency. Like, here's how little the Americans care about their own children. Karen Rezhidnik, a board member, said the free program made it easy for families to become spoiled. This is in regards to a school district opted out of free and reduced-priced meals, saying students could become spoiled. Darren Clark, assistant superintendent for business services, said there could be a slow addiction to the service. You see, poor kids may become addicted to food if we feed them. So, this is how little Americans care about their own children, right? That they think that feeding children will addict them to food. Or they think people will become spoiled if they have to feed children. That kind of thing, right? So Americans finding every excuse they can to not feed children. Like, this is literally what we're talking about. So how much less do you think they give a shit about prisoners? Right? And the only reason why Americans even tolerate keeping prisoners alive, in my perspective, is because they make good slave labor. Here's a great chart to show people intergenerational wealth, right? So we see, starting in 1990, the baby boomer generation had 20% of the wealth, right? So 1990, and then about 30 years later, they're sitting on slightly under 60% of the wealth, right? There's your chart. Well, here's where Generation X started. Here's where they were in 1990, right? Less than 10% of the wealth. And now they're sitting, 2019, less than 20% of the wealth. Millennials, 2008, 2019. Like, what do you think is happening here? My grandmother was not a highly educated woman, but she told me as a small child to quit feeding stray animals. South Carolina Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer said during a town hall meeting. You know why? Because they breed. Wow. Right? It's explicit. Like, you're explicitly saying that we shouldn't be feeding children. And of course, let's be explicit about who they're talking about. They're talking about black children, right? They're talking about black or brown or Hispanic children. That if these were white children they were talking about, they'd be feeding them, right? But white children already are fed because white children are part of the project of prosperity. That American policymakers decided to ensure that white people got all the money, and all of the rest of the races got fucked over. And that was 11 years ago, yeah. But the cruelty of these people is unforgettable, and yet eugenics is close behind. You're on that bubble, Guppy, for sure. Like, this is an absolutely brutal reality of what it, like, it's been very difficult for me over the last, when did it really start that I actually started to accept that the people who are voting for, like, I used to think that people, like conservative types, were just sort of deluded, or they were not deluded, but like they were mistaken, that they or uneducated. Maybe that's the way to say it. That they were that they genuinely didn't understand what they were voting for and what they were doing. And it's been very difficult to come to terms with the reality that they do know. That they're very well aware. They're well aware of what they're doing and what their policies are, right? That this is the quality of the people that exist in our country. Which is why I think we need to begin teaching ethics and morals to children on a very, very, very young age. Very young age. And really basic stuff, like sharing, right? How important it is to share. Yeah, if only the Tsar knew, yeah. Oh, here was a great article, actually. Comes out of the conversation. The Canadian election 2021. Do strategic voting campaigns actually work? Interestingly, what was the name again? Larry Savage. So Larry Savage is actually dedicated to studying this phenomenon. That was his expertise, and he goes through it. As you can see, I'm not going to read this out loud. I forgot to read an article out loud today. I was just enjoying talking to you guys so much. How about that? Look at that. And also, it's Friday. Let's all just chill out on Friday. And he found out So despite the now widespread use of anti-conservative strategic voting tactics, the effectiveness of coordinated campaigns is suspect. In some cases, strategic voting efforts have not only failed to block the election of conservative candidates, but counterproductively facilitated their election by confusing voters and further splintering anti-conservative votes. So it doesn't actually work. And it doesn't actually manifest. It doesn't actually manifest in the results. Right? So much for that. So much for that. Canada is spending $73 billion on affordable housing, and it will push prices higher. This comes from Better Dwelling. So they break down Canada's $73.4 billion affordable housing. The CMHC is delivering $36.7 billion. An additional $24.4 billion will be delivered to the same plan, and existing spending represents $12.3 billion. The plan doesn't make much more supply. It mostly takes credit for existing plans, right? But we've already been trying to tackle this issue, and so these politicians are completely bullshitting us, right? They're completely lying to us. They must at least be subsidizing the units to make sure the rents are capped, right? Some programs with less strict affordability criteria that allow market rate housing to be funding, like the Rental Construction Financing Initiative, may also be supporting private market activity that would have occurred anyway. Borrowing debt to build market rate housing isn't effective. And I love that. That's just one large and expensive boondoggle of a program. The rest of the program doesn't do much either, though. In the words of the PBO, the whole strategy has a limited impact on achieving affordability. Fixing housing with more government debt creates higher home prices. Cheap debt drives home prices higher. If everybody can take out cheap debt, then why shouldn't you jack the price of the house, right? More credit means faster home price growth. Cheap debt breaks fixed income returns. And they just keep going and they just keep going. And this article doesn't even touch on what I consider to be the coup de grace of the reality of this affordable housing grift that's being perpetrated against the populace, which is that the billionaires buy it all anyway, right? Doesn't matter how much you build. Build 100 million houses. Build a billion houses. I don't care. Build as many houses as you want. The billionaires are going to buy them. Why? Because when the economy collapses, because the billionaires are well aware that they are pillaring this economy to collapse it, they know they are. And how do I know that's the truth? Because all of the hedge funds are betting against the market. If you go into the stock market and you take a look, where is Citadel spending its money? Where's BlackRock spending its money? Where's Vanguard spending its money? Where are all the hedge funds putting their money? They're putting them in hedges against, they're shorting the market. They're putting all of their money shorting the entire market. So they know that the thing is going to collapse. They know that it's collapsing, and they are betting their money on the fact that it will collapse, and they will ensure that it does. And so when you collapse a market economy like this, well, what do you want? You want land. You want resources. You want hard commodities that are necessary for a society to work, right? If you're a capitalist, you want to wedge yourselves into places where you don't belong so that you can parasitically siphon as much wealth as you can away. And so when the economy collapses, the billionaires want to have access to as much land as they can possibly have. So go ahead, build as much housing as you'd like. Build 100 million houses, build a billion houses, build a quadrillion houses. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care how much housing you build. The billionaires will buy it. And that's why the system doesn't work. That's why having billionaires is dangerous. That's why we need to get rid of them, so that if we built 100 million houses, people would actually be able to get them. And of course, conservatives surging with male voters. This is the typical, right? Like, oh, big surprise. A fascist movement that's operating in Canada is surging with straight white men. Big fucking surprise. You just need to tell them they're the author of their own fate. You just need to tell them that they're the heroes of their own story, right? This is like pretty straightforward Nazi propaganda shit, right? You just convince these straight white men that they're actually powerful super gods, put them in a big fucking truck, inflate their ego, just have them walk around saying, go get a job, that kind of dumb bullshit, and they'll vote for their own destruction. Ruth is saying, funny, my grandparents used to feed the birds and throw out the scraps for the strays and told us never to waste food when you could feed someone else. Yeah, that's how I was taught too. Like, where did this narrative of like, hey, you've got to eat everything on your plate, there are people starving in Africa, where did that go? My grandma would say that shit to me. Eat everything on your plate, there's people starving in Africa. Right? But we don't say that to each other anymore because that implies sort of a base compassion that our society doesn't have, right? We don't have that kind of base compassion. So who gives a shit about these African kids, right? Like, eat everything on your plate. There are people starving in Africa. Who gives a fuck? Nobody cares. We're not interested in learning or talking about that. Like, so they should get better jobs, right? They should just go get a job, right? That's the mantra now. Oh, their children are starving in Africa. Well, they should get a fucking job. Go to school, get good grades. What's wrong? Like, that's what we're saying to each other. So much for empathy or compassion. Interesting. I wonder why it is that more women vote Liberal as well. Is there any statistical analysis as to why? Can I tell you? I really do think it just comes down to the Karens and the Kens are all voting like. The Karens are voting for Justin because he's talking a feminist game and he's kind of swoony, and the Kens are voting for are voting for Aaron O'Toole because he's a strong military man who's going to solve our housing crisis. Like I think it's very basic. I think it's very, very basic. Yeah, eat because kids in Africa are starving. You eat your food. Yeah, that's common. It's like a common thing that people say, but nobody says it anymore because nobody gives a fuck about those kids. Like, who gives a shit about them? Like, that's the narrative. Like, that's the mantra. Like, who gives a fuck about those kids at all? Being so powerless in the day-to-day reality of capital, it's insidious. Doling out the false promise of power. If you serve fascism, it's so horrifying. Yeah. Yeah. And, like, the duplicity and the gullibility is what really gets me. Like, watching Canadians fall for the same garbage rhetoric that we see over and over and over and over again, right? Just watching them be spoon-fed this nonsense, bullshit, overt propaganda. Like, Aaron O'Toole walking around saying he's going to do something about the housing crisis is a joke. No, he's not. He's obviously not. That would mean actually having to confront capital. He's not going to do that, right? And you're like the most gullible person alive if you actually think he is, right? And his climate change policies are a disaster. Like, they're more disastrous than what Trudeau is currently doing, right? Like, I think I even have something that explicitly says this. Yeah. O'Toole says he would cut emissions to levels set by Harper. Rejects Liberals' more aggressive target. So think about how pathetic these Liberals have been, right? They're banning straws, and they're not even going to meet the Paris objectives or anything like that, right? O'Toole wants to make it worse. And it's one of the most odd things about this election so far, that one of the number one issues for Canadians is climate change, but the front runner is a climate change denialist. What? We're asking men to live in a standard that's no longer possible. It drives some people crazy. Well, especially because we've convinced, like, we've propagandized people so much into believing that you can't be a real man unless you drive a big truck or shoot a big gun, right? And it all just comes down to salesmanship, right? It just comes down to the fact that we've sold them on this idea of masculinity that's trash. Like, it's total trash. Like, this and it manifests itself in the conversation through people say like toxic masculinity. I don't really buy into this whole toxic masculinity thing. We used to just call those guys assholes, right? Like that. Like it to me, it doesn't. It has very little to do with like masculinity. It just has everything to do with being a total fucking asshole. I shouldn't denigrate assholes like that. Assholes are actually very useful, right? They get rid of something you don't like, right? They're willing to put up with a lot of shit. I should be nicer to assholes. Yeah, it's like they say, Nazis are bad. Wait, I have an idea. Nazism. Yeah, that's something that I really wish it became fashionable to shit on Nazis again. Like, why is it that we're supposed to tolerate Nazis in our discourse? Why is it that, like, Nazis are supposed to be able to stand up and say, oh, my freedom of speech, I should be able to say what I want? Nah, Nazis have no rights. Like, if you're walking around saying, I want to destroy the Jews, if you're walking around saying that the white Aryan race is the best and everybody else needs to subserviate themselves to white people, no, we can tell you to shut the fuck up, and we can put you in jail to do it, which we've done, which we do. Even the United States does that. If you go around handing out pamphlets in the United States, even saying that say we should round up the Jews, they take you and they put you in prison, where you should stay. It's super ironic that conservatives call Marxists soy boys. Literally the most manly thing. Yeah, I don't understand the discourse on that at all. It's so stupid. It's like when people call me a tanky. Like, they call me a tanky as if I'm supposed to be insulted by it. I'm like, tanky? Tanks are sweet. So you, the guy that worship guns, right? Like, because fascists love guns, right? There's a whole gun culture. So you, the fascist who loves guns, call me by the coolest gun. How is this an insult? Like, I don't it reminds me how stupid they are. Like, if you're calling someone a tanky and expecting them to be offended, you're a very stupid person. Like, that's a very stupid thing to do. Like, I don't get why am I supposed to be insulted by it. And I never am. Like, I've never once. I'm just like, anytime somebody calls me a tanky, I get that same sort of feeling like I get the same sort of feeling when like a 5-year-old calls me a poo-poo head. It's just like a kind of tilting of the head, being like, like, dude, you're trying. That's nice. You're really trying to insult me. It's cute. It's real cute. You're a poo-poo head. Like, you're a tanky. I just don't see the difference. Like, what am I supposed to be? What? Oh, okay. Yeah, conservative climate rewards program, carbon tariffs don't stand up to scrutiny. What? Wow, conservative climate policy doesn't actually work? What? And like, you just go through it and it's just bullshit. It's just bullshit upon bullshit. Okay, slight shift of gear. I got 2 Jacobin articles. I was actually going to read these out loud today, but I decided to just have fun today. But this article I actually think is really important. And I might save this one because some of Canada's biggest capitalists are plotting an attack on Canadian workers. So this is an article that I think is really important because there's a focus group called Coalition for a Better Future, founded on August 5th, that exists, that has been put together, and it looks basically like it's just the fascists getting together to create another think tank. Working under Prime Minister Stephen Harper, Rate showed a willingness to intervene directly in private sector to end strikes. So it's Ann McClellan and Lisa Wright, two conservative politicians. The other individuals, corporations, and organizations backing the CFABF are hardly any better. Like, we should know about these guys. We should know so that if they actually put the most reprehensible member is the Business Council of Canada, the Canadian equivalent of the U.S. Business Roundtable. Established in 1976, its response to economic crisis, it has gone by the names Business Council on National Issues and the Canadian Council of Chief Executives. Its name may have changed twice, but its mission hasn't. The BCC is the premier lobbying group of big business in Canada, and like its counterpart to the South, it's played a major role in advocating for and giving ideological coherence to the neoliberal policies of the last several decades. When the BCC speaks, the Canadian government listens. So this is one of the most dangerous organizations in Canada. They have been espousing a false ideology of neoliberalism and pretending as though it's a economic system. And they're doing it specifically so that they can dismantle the society and return us to a system of neo-feudalism. The obsession with soy, beta, alpha shows a real insecurity, yeah. Oh yeah, dude, there's nobody more insecure than conservatives. Like, why do you think they're driving around these big fucking trucks that they don't actually use? Like, it's 100% just like, it's the same as like when you get a rich guy in LA driving around in a Lamborghini, right? Like they're so, like, they don't actually exist as a person, right? They don't actually have an internal life. They don't actually have an internal kind of being, right? That they have to articulate themselves with toys, essentially, right? And that's all this shit is. That's all it is. Like, and I don't care if you like cars or guns or any of that kind of stuff. Like, that's fine. But that's not what's happening, right? It's not even like a hobby for these guys. It's part of their identity, right? If you've got a truck, if you've got one of these big kind of things, it becomes part of your identity. It's who you are as a person. And so when we're saying, like, hey, we need to get rid of these cars, like, these trucks are actually a big problem, right? Well, it's not saying to an adult, hey, that thing that you're doing is destructive and we've got to pull back on it. Because an adult would be like, ah, man, that sucks. That's unfortunate. But, you know, I get it because I don't want my children to die, right? That's what an adult would say. But if you're a kid that never grew up and your whole life has been defined, like, and part of your identity is defined by having this truck, well, suddenly if you take the truck away, then they're not really anything, are they? Right? They're not really anything. CBC's Trudeau rally was canceled because of protesters. Good. Glad to hear that. Like, I'm glad to hear that. Fuck Trudeau. Avocado toast. Jeez Louise. Imagine believing that someone is living in poverty because they're eating avocado toast. Like, imagine being that fucking disconnected from reality. I'm so glad that avocado toast thing got seized by the millennials. I'm so glad that we didn't let that one by. That we all just went like, avocado toast, fuck you. I can't pay rent this month. Must be all that avocado toast I've been eating. Like, as if this is how disconnected. Like, that's on the same level as in Arrested Development when the mother went, how much could a banana cost, Michael? $10? Like, just completely total bullshit. Ugh. I sometimes feel that there are social narratives that are intentionally created a reality that can be controlled. Can't have people discussing solutions reasonably. Yeah, that absolutely happens. But it doesn't happen in like the scheming way that people think about it when socialists and Marxists actually talk about it, right? That it's created as a byproduct of the exclusion of discourse. So like, you can't discuss in the media the idea of nationalization. That the media just doesn't talk about nationalization. And it's obviously a decision. Like, it's obviously a decision at some point that has been made. But, like, the media, you don't need to tell the media, you don't need to tell media people, hey, don't talk about nationalization, right? Because they know, right? They know what talking about nationalization means for their owners. And they know that it's in the best interest of their owners to not have things be nationalized. So, don't talk about it, right? And that's how most of it works. That, like, and that's, again, this is why having even a single billionaire in your society is dangerous. Because the billionaire doesn't need to explicitly and expressly dictate things to people. That it just becomes understood, right? That, oh, well, the billionaire owns that. I work for the billionaire. Why would I talk about something that the billionaire wouldn't want me to talk about? And I just understand that. And because I've spent my entire life doing what I'm told, right? And being rewarded for doing what I'm told, well, then I'm just going to continue doing what I'm told. And anticipating the demands and the desires of your owner is part of doing what you're told. And like, so they just don't bring it up. They just don't talk about it. And that's how a lot of it works. Like, you'll never hear like Fox News talking about nationalization. That's not part of it. Yeah, it is a form of Stockholm Syndrome. Well, and they're well rewarded for it. Like, we literally are at a point now where we have billionaires bribing millionaires to convince people who make $50,000 a year that the problem is the people making $20,000 a year. Like, that's the structure of the system. That a billionaire bribes a millionaire to convince a middle-class worker that the problem is the poor. Like, that's the system. Yeah, I got rid of my microwave a little while ago, too. Just like, I just decided not to have it. And, you know, I don't miss it. Not having a microwave means that you can't get the really shitty food, right? That a microwave seems to exist only to let you have the worst type of food. That, like, your pizza pops and your Hot Pockets and all that kind of shit, right? That you're not actually going to cook in the oven. Like, nobody actually cooks those in the oven. Unless you're, like, desperate. But, like, have you actually had a pizza pop in the last little while? Has anybody here actually had a pizza pop in the last little bit? I think the last pizza pop I had was maybe 10 years ago, and it was disgusting. I was just like, why does anyone buy these? Why does anyone buy these? I remember when I was a kid, like, a pizza pop, I was like, yeah, pizza pop's great thing ever. Yeah, I can't wait. But that just tells you that kids don't know shit. Just that, like, kids don't know shit. They don't know anything, dude. I just think that it's like a little tiny pocket, and they're just like, nom, 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 right? But, like, you get older and you start to go like, yeah, I think I would like to eat food, right? I think I'm in the mood to just eat some food. What do you think, right? And if I want, like, you know, something pizza related, then I'll just get a goddamn pizza like an adult. like imagine like you're taking a cardboard box that has a plastic thing inside of it, like a plastic bag. You pop open the plastic bag, and then you put another cardboard box on a plate, right? And then you take that plate that's got the cardboard box on it, and you put it in the microwave, and you heat it, but you can never heat it so that the inside is actually warm, right? Because if you do that, then the cardboard box pops open and all the stuff comes out of it, right? Gets stuck on the plate and all that. And so then you gotta wait. Then you wait for it to cool, and then you eat it, and it's essentially tasteless. Like, there's no flavor to it. It's cardboard, what they're giving you. and it's got like a cheese-like substance inside of it, and the meat chunks that exist in it have like literally been cut by a machine, and you can tell. And like, if you eat a pizza pop, you can actually taste the factory that they're made in. This is something that I've really begun to notice about a lot of these processed foods. Sometimes you can literally taste the factory that they're made in. I remember one time somebody gave me some like cheap chocolate, or I bought some cheap chocolate because it was just super on sale. And I was eating the chocolate. I was like, I can taste the factory. I can taste the factory that this was made in. And that's a big reason why I can't eat lots of processed foods, because I can taste the factory. And it's just so low grade, and it's so shitty, and it's so like I can't believe we literally kill animals to put in this garbage food. Right? Taste the factory. New slogan, like Skittles. Exactly. Oh yeah, and the freezer burning, all that garbage. And in the end, like, it doesn't actually, like, I would rather, like, I straight up just eat an apple, dude. Just like eat an apple. like don't and like buy a bag of cherries. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't get how it is that pizza pockets and all these kind of garbage processed foods, like, how are they still around? Are we so fucking embedded in this garbage disaster nonsense that we're just jamming this shit trash in our face? Ugh. Steam some veggies, damn it. Yeah, like, fuck. I don't know, man. Well, and the thing that doesn't make sense. Oh, I used to make bread too. I used to have a bread machine and make bread. I have a gluten intolerance, unfortunately, so I can't do that anymore. That's a part of it too, Silverlight. You're right on the money with that. Too expensive, time consuming, right? Like, and eating fresh stuff, especially if you're living in like not a great area, like if they've really got to push to get stuff out to you, it can be really expensive. Yeah. It is cheaper than a bunch of bananas. You're right about that, Ruth, actually. Like, as we're talking about this, it is important to bring it back that, like, you know, it sometimes these decisions do come down to just like a cost-benefit analysis, right? That, like, hey, it's all well and good to say buy some apples or something like that, but those apples, you know, a box of, like, how much does a box of Pizza Pockets even cost? Pizza Pockets cost. Here you go, a 14-pack from Walmart. How much? Price unavailable. Lame. Come on, we're doing here six pizza pack, pepperoni 6-pack Pizza Pockets, right? So $7.50 for 6 of these. So you're looking at like $1.25 each. I think that's actually right on the money, $1.25. So $1.25 for 6 Pizza Pockets. 6 apples. This is fun. I love this. So, apples. And of course, they're not even showing me apples. They're literally like, here's all the bullshit. No, dude, an apple. Like, how much does an apple cost? How much does an apple cost? The retail price of a red delicious apple was around $1.32. So, and that's in US dollars. So more expensive. It is more expensive to get 6 apples than it is to get a 6-pack of Pizza Pockets, right? Man, that's tough to like. That's tough. I have such a difficult time with that. Like, how could that possibly be the case? How could that possibly be the case? Like, these Pizza Pockets, like, way more manufacturing goes into this. Way more shit is way more labor is going into that than like an apple. I how could it be possible? I actually heard factories put a thin layer of wax on apples to make them last a few more weeks, make them shiny. Oh, and they're irradiated too. Yeah, that's good. That's not having any consequences. Then they sell a product to remove the wax. Like, what the fuck, eh? Like, what the fuck is this? Like, what the fuck is this system? Yeah, how many neighborhoods don't have an affordable grocery nearby? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know my neighborhood, it's like, I'm right on, like, the tip. If the grocery store that I went to was even a couple of blocks farther, it would be a real trek for me to get to. And when I do my grocery shopping, I, like, literally take a wagon with me and, like, really buy in bulk if I can, and buy, like, a ton of stuff. Because the other option I have is just, like, the convenience stores around, and they, you know, they add, like, $2 on everything. But this is, like, this in my view is all part of it. Like, make the junk food, make the shit that's not good as cheap as possible, and make the stuff that is too expensive, right? And it just seems like a type of manufacturing of scarcity, right? Like, there's like, you're telling me that apples are getting expensive, but at the same time, like, I clicked on apples here, and there's all this bullshit, right? Freeze-dried sweet apple, bare apple chips, right? Bare apple Granny Chips organic, 1 a bite, apples, like Granny Smith apple, blah, 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 blah. And that's all cheaper than fucking just apples, but, well, it's not cheaper. It's actually quite a bit more expensive. And some of it does come down to, like, dumb shit. Like, they won't, if an apple is malformed, they'll get rid of it and it'll become something like this. Because oh, God help me, if I see a malformed apple on the shelf, suddenly life is over. Oh, life is so much worse because this apple is misshapen. Like, talk about coddling people, eh? Talk about a coddled society. Like, oh, I can't see a malformed apple. What are you? It's like a fucking little baby. Like, man, this apple's misshapen. I shouldn't. Oh my God. Yeah, when I moved from house to apartment, I made sure I had a Sobeys right in my backyard, literally. Yeah, it is nice to have a grocery store, like, right nearby. That's super nice. Yeah, I wonder about that. How bad is food waste? How much food is wasted in Canada? 58% of all food produced in Canada is lost or wasted, and about a third of that wasted food could be rescued and sent to communities in need across the country. And here's the sad reality about this, guys, is that the reason why the capitalist system will refuse to distribute the 58% wasted food that exists in Canada, the reason why they won't distribute it is that the distribution of free food into the society would reduce the amount of money they could charge for the food that you get. Don't you think capitalism's working? Huh? Don't you think capitalism's the greatest system you've ever worked in your life? Don't you think that it's great that we're throwing away almost 60% of food, with a third of that food being completely usable that could be sent to communities in need? Don't you think that that's great? Capitalism's the most efficient system in the world. It's the best at distributing resources. Don't you think? Huh? Don't you think? Yeah, it's artificial scarcity. That's exactly what it is. And what's like, here's a crazy thought. Hey guys, here's a crazy bananas thought. What if, just thinking out loud, okay? What if the agricultural system and the distribution of agricultural goods was nationalized, that we supported it through taxation, right? and everybody just got food for free. My favorite is if you say that, people will say things like, "Oh, well, then people will just take a bunch of food they don't need and it'll be wasted." And I'm like, we're already wasting 50% of the food now. How much more waste could there possibly be? Like, do you genuinely believe that people would waste more food than we waste now? Do you genuinely believe that? I don't think that these people, like, I've said it over and over again, right? I don't think that people who are against feeding people are doing it honestly. I think that people want these people to be hungry. I think they want them to suffer. That's really where we're at. Yeah, I'm gonna gorge on apples till I puke, man. Yeah, right. Because that's normal, right? Because that's how humans actually work. We certainly don't just, like, eat what we need and then move on. Like, I remember I watched a documentary once about crocodiles. And we have this idea that, like, crocodiles are like these vicious, like, killers that'll they fight over food and all this kind of stuff. So when a crocodile kills something like an antelope or gets access to an antelope, all of the crocodiles in the area literally form a line, and every crocodile takes a piece of the antelope and eats. And if there's leftovers, you can go back through again. So literally, like, the creature that you think would be, like, the most hoardy and the most, like, no, this is all mine, shares. And when you go and you actually look at animals throughout the animal kingdom, most of them operate this way. That they get the kill and then they share it. Not here, not in Canada. We don't share food. That's not how we roll, right? Oh, you can't subserviate yourself to a wage slave economy? No, you don't get to eat. So we are actually less moral and ethical than crocodiles when it comes to this particular issue. That even crocodiles know how to share. Kind of like Harris told people after they cut OW, go buy peanut butter and bananas and see if you can make a deal with the store manager. Yeah, isn't that disgusting? Like, what a disgraceful person. Like, Harris has got to be one of the most disgraceful premiers that Ontario has had. And it's disgraceful that such a man would actually get into power. Like, the people who are voting for people like Doug Ford and Mike Harris, just, like, despicable people. Yeah, capitalism's not a civilized system. It's a slave system. It started as a slave system, and it continues to attempt to survive as a slave system. It's not interested in improving the well-being of its citizens. It's not interested in any of that. Yeah, of course he did. He probably paid somebody, right? Even Dick Cheney got a bust. Like, it's no, I mean, like, I've just come to terms with the reality that our society is full of people who like fascism, right? Like, that's just something that I think we all have to come to terms with. That you can scream about fascism all day long, and you can get upset about, this is fascism and all this kind of stuff, and you can, like, try to convince people that it's fascism all you want, but the reality is that, like, they know. Like, they know. They like it. They want it to be fascism. They're a fan of fascism. They're rather fond of fascism, right? That's why you have, like, the victims of communism, right? The victims of communism memorial that gets put up by Stephen Harper and then is continued funded by Justin Trudeau. Well, the victims of communism, do you know who they put? Do you know who they consider victims of communism? Nazis. That if you go and you actually look at the lists of people who are considered victims of communism, according to this victim of communism memorial, on the lists are the Nazis that lost the war against the communists. Victims of communism, Nazis. So they know. Right? They know. They just like Nazis. Right? Like Chrystia Freeland's grandfather was a Nazi collaborator. Right? They know. They're well aware that fascism is real in Canada. They're very aware that fascism is here, and that it is an ideology that is spreading, and they like it. That's what they want, right? So when you see like an uptick of support for the Conservatives, it's not like it isn't actually deluded people who are making bad decisions without any knowledge. It's people who are well aware that they're voting for a white supremacist fascist and are fine with it. Yep. Until next time, my sexy John, well, crouching you. Good night. Have a great weekend, everybody. Don't look up Abby Shapiro naked, guys. Don't do it, you guys. Don't. All right, guys, we are at the end of it. Thanks so much for being here, guys. I appreciate it every single time. It's such a pleasure talking to you. It's such a pleasure coming together in solidarity. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. Think about throwing $1 my way. If you are already donating $1, maybe think about making it $2. Thanks so much, guys. Always remember, you are a divine being, standing in divine energy. Don't let these guys gaslight you and convince you otherwise. Good luck. We're going to need it.